1 minute. Good morning and welcome to the monthly workshop, January 6th, 2026. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful break and are rested and ready to go. We are actually going to switch up things. We have item number 2 is what we're going to start with today, which is the strategic plan update. Mr. Superintendent, I'll take it up to you.
Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year to everybody. And it's been a wonderful break, but we are back in action. Our students are back in class today. Our teachers had the ability for a professional day yesterday to come back and ease into the routine, and we're looking forward to an exciting 2026 to close out this school year, as well as make preparations for the upcoming school year. That starts now, right? We don't plan in the summer for next year. We start as early as, actually we've been planning for the last several months. But today what I'd like to do is give the board a couple of updates that I know that you are pertinent to where we're at. And that is a strategic plan update on 3.2, which is foster employee engagement. As you recall, many of you were present on the board when we were blessed with a grant from the Baransics about 2 years ago related to the Studer Group and in creating organizational excellence and developing service excellence standards to really build upon that continuous improvement mindset so that we're delivering top quality customer service and holistically around our organization, just making sure that we're hearing from our constituents, getting their feedback, and building in better processes so that we're running faithfully, efficiently, and reliable. So in that effort, we want to first again thank the Baransics for allowing us to have that grant, but as well give you an update about what has been accomplished up to this point related to the implementation of the Studer work. So I'm going to hand it over to our newly designated chair of our appointed person for our Studer work, and that is our Chief of Human Resources, Ms. Ashley Ramadka. This work did begin with our chief staff, as you recall, with Mr. Renoff, and then Mr. Dumas has been working steadily on this as well, and so that shift has been made, and so she is going to share this part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Connor and members of the board. We are very excited to be able to present to you today and share about our organizational excellence. Jody Dumas, our Executive Director of Facility Services, is going to kick us off today.
Well, good morning, board members, superintendent. It's a wonderful opportunity to give a brief overview of our journey in organizational excellence. I'm going to take a couple minutes just to kind of review how we got where we are, and then kind of what does it mean as to be on this journey of organizational excellence. So those of you that have been around a little while when we began this process, if you remember, one of the things we went looking for in operations was a way to get better at what we did, right? We were, as the superintendent mentions, we're always looking for continuous improvement, and we were very good but we could get better. And it seemed like some vehicle to kind of make that happen. At that time, Chris Renoff had been in touch with the student group over the years. If you remember, we had been partnered with the student group in the past. And as we were talking about what's a vehicle to get us to higher levels of performance in the operations side, Chris connected us back with the student group. And as we met with them through the development of the strategic plan under Superintendent Connor, really their vision for how they lead organizations, specifically educational organizations, through the continuous improvement process through organizational excellence, really aligned with what we were doing, what we were thinking, and how we were trying to move forward. So at that time, Mr. Renoff approached the Barancik Foundation, and they loved the opportunity to really have a district-wide impact in everything we do. We focus so much on student delivery of education, the learning process, and that's important. That's what we should be focusing on. But this program focused on everything else. If you think about organizations that truly achieve at high levels, not only their core mission they do very well at, but they do very well at everything else that surrounds that. And when I think about organizational excellence, that's exactly what it is. It's not really about teaching and learning. It's about everything else as an organization we do to make us the best we possibly can be. Really, I think the quote on the first page of the presentation, do you have the clicker?
No, we're having technical difficulties with the clicker right now.
Okay.
IT team is working on that.
Okay. Well, on the first page of the presentation is a quote. It says, focusing on developing and supporting leaders in key processes for listening to feedback from teachers, parents, students, and other stakeholders, and incorporating input into action for continuous improvement is really the focus of the grant from the Baranciks and our journey in organizational excellence. Again, this started in operations because we saw the need to continue to try and improve, and we needed a vehicle to do that. But as we presented the thought process and the student group to the superintendent, we saw the opportunity to take this to a district-wide focus. And so our first 2 years, first year completed, go into our second year. As we continue throughout our second year into our third year, this will transition not only from an operations standpoint, but into all of our schools and the district as a whole. And so we really like that standardization. When I think about this process, I think it really is people, process, standardization, and then accountability. To me, those are the themes that ride through everything we're doing with organizational excellence. Okay, key components of the program and requirements of the grant, things that were written into things that we said we're going to do as part of this process. Number one, engage in facilitation of strategy and scorecard development with an operations leadership team. Again, focus on the operations side. What this really meant was strategic plan in every department, aligned across the district with specific measurable benchmarks, things we needed to achieve every year. This is the accountability piece we're talking about. Service excellence standards, district-wide. One of the things I feel like we've always lacked is a district-wide focus, a benchmark from what we're all moving from. And that establishment of district-wide service standards of excellence, to me, sets the stage for moving forward. All conversations, everything we do wraps around that. Important to develop those. This program focuses on people, training leaders to be better leaders. We are a people organization, no matter which way you look at it. The more we invest in our people, the more we engage our people, and the more we engage our leaders, the better outcomes we're going to have for students, the better outcomes we're going to have for our community. Year one specific deliverables, next slide. To me, I saw year one as really establishing a benchmark for everything we were doing moving forward. And that was establishing a foundation for what does our customer service look like on the operations side. And that really meant we got to go to our customers. We got to have a data-driven way of defining how we're doing. And you'll have Ashley talk more about this through some of our customer surveys that we're doing. Again, I just talked about standards of service excellence. We had a team, a guiding coalition, which many were a part of, included from levels within all levels of the organization. But it really talked about, okay, what do we truly believe in? What do we say in our strategic plan? And let's come to some common values that we all agree on for customer service. That was important and a lot of hard work. Really quarterly training sessions with the student group. The student group comes in quarterly and meets with operations directors, and we talk about where we are in the progress. Ms. Ramotka and I talk a lot about, and Dr. Kemp talk a lot about where are we? What do we need to do to keep moving it forward? Because one of the things we don't want this to become is something that gets put on the back burner. And so forcing monthly meetings to talk about where we are, what we're doing, and how we're moving forward, those conversations keep things relevant and keep us moving forward. Developing a division scorecard. And so I talked a little bit about this in terms of developing a strategic plan in every department. That rolls to at the operations level under Dr. Kemp to say, okay, in every department, we're aligned with what the operations department is doing in support of the academic side of the house. So we're all aligned in our vision, mission, and moving forward. Going to employees and surveying them and saying, okay, what do you think about not only your work environment, but operationally, how are we performing? What are your ideas? What are your thoughts? How can we move this district forward? Really engaging our workforce in the place that they work. That is super important. There are so many great ideas out there, but we have to have the conversations and they have to lead to something. And so that process is in place through this program. And then really driving this to all levels in the organization. I think in past efforts, even with the Studer Group, when we've done this before, one of the things we did was do a very good job at the executive level of talking about the program and what it looked like. But we did not get down to the food service worker on the front line, the aide on the bus, the custodian in the route. We didn't do that, so we did not ingrain it in the culture. And so we're really focused on that piece of this program this year with this effort. Ashley's going to talk a lot about Train the Trainer, an influencer program, and I am so excited when we get to those slides for her to talk about that, because that's where we really try to drive it down and have the people doing the work talk about the program and why it's important. So those are the deliverables year one, and we're excited that we met all of those goals. In addition, cycle improvement stop and checks with all of our departments, all of our directors. How are we doing? The employee experience survey I discussed, that was super important. We've got that out. We got that feedback back. Conduct results rollout. I call that, in my words, digging deeper. So when the surveys go out, whether it's customer service or employee engagement, those surveys come back. There is a whole process that we've put in place, led by the Studer Group, that's analyzing the data, talking with our teams, developing action plans to address those and reporting on them, not only higher up to Dr. Kemp and to the superintendent, but also to the employees in the department. Where are we? What are we doing? Where are we going? And why is it important? And then nothing you're going to see today as we talk about this program is groundbreaking. It's not something that's mind-blowing. They can say, oh my God, this is a great new idea. Some of the ideas, things that we're going to talk about, that you're going to see, that we're talking about in all of our departments with all of our people, are simple things. But they're standard across every department, and we're training down to the level of the first-line employee to be able to make sure those tactics are in place. So, for example, what's the message like on your phone when somebody calls and nobody answers? Well, if you talk to 5 different people, there are 5 different ways a message is kind of left on their phone. And so how do we standardize that, make sure we're hitting the principles of customer service and all those things, but we're doing it to all levels in every department, and focusing on how do we serve our customers best. And so those are the year one deliverables, and we're excited to say that we're well beyond actually that scope. Why Studer Education? Ashley, thank you. As I said when I said the conversation, as a strategic plan under Superintendent Connor developed, and our re-engagement with the Studer Group, it became easy to see that they aligned with the way that this was going. Their culture, the way they addressed their project, the support they provide, it just felt like it was a good spot for us to be. Their why, you can see a slide here, creating great places to work, learn, and succeed in education. Also a key, they're partnered with a bunch of school districts across the United States, so they bring experiences. When we're benchmarking, they've got data from other like groups that we can benchmark our data against to say, okay, how are we doing as a school district? They were a good fit. Next one. If you take a look at kind of what they think, I talked about how they're people-focused. Right here, people first. That actually is how they conduct their business. That's what they constantly have us focusing on. And I think we're doing a great job now of focusing on all of our people. Service is everything. Absolutely. Understanding in every mode, in every department, what does the customer want from us? Not what do we think good service is, but what does the customer want, and how do we make sure we adapt to changing conditions? Strategy and execution, absolutely. What do we plan to do each year? How are we executing? And during the year, making adjustments if we're not in the benchmark, super key. And the results matter. At the end of the year, as we report to the board and the superintendent, how are we achieving our plans? They have 9 principles. And I think you'll see how these align really good with our strategic plan. I'll go through them quickly. Their 9 principles are: commit to excellence, measure the important things, a culture around service, develop leaders to develop people, focus on employee engagement, be accountable, align behaviors with goals, communicate at all levels, and reward and recognize success. I think you can see if we focus on these things too, we are going to be the organization we want to be in terms of providing that service to the community. All right. Some more? Yep, one more. So as we talk about our journey in organizational excellence, there are a few big categories, buckets, if you will, where we've kind of put everything that we've been working on. First one is a really big lift was the district support staff survey. That is basically our customer service survey that we put out this year that went, actually 2 years now. We got our second report in, so we went out last year, talked to our customers. They took the survey. We did a lot of work behind the survey, which Mr. Ramadka will talk more about. We've now got a second survey where we can see, are we making improvements? Are we not making improvements? And talk to our customers. Super important, the employee experience survey. As you all know, in the operations side over the years, we've had a lot of difficulty getting our employees involved in taking an employee experience survey. The participation rate has been low. We're really encouraging participation in employee experience survey, which is coming up here really soon for our second one. And one of the things that we're doing is we're letting them see that, listen, take the survey, give us suggestions. Those suggestions are making changes. And we're continually going back to them to talk about what you suggested, what are the changes we need to be making, where are we in that progress? So again, building that empowering that employee piece. Service excellence, we talked about that. That's doing whatever we got to do to make sure we're satisfying the customer and trying to understand exactly what they need and how they need it. And again, talking the same language in every department across the operations division. And then, to me, key to all this also, leader excellence. Making sure our leaders at the very ground level that are outside doing the work every day, supervising the teams that are out there doing the work, that they're empowered, they have the tools in the toolkit to make good decisions and to empower their employees. I think that's the power in some of the training that we're doing. And as a visual to talk about what it's like, right? I mean, like I said, in the past, we've done a very good job at being very good, but how do we get to excellent? And this is a slide that talks about that, right? It's people, procedure, right? Policy, standardization, moving everybody in the same direction, speaking the same language, and having the same set of customer service rules of engagement, I think, across all of our lowest level employees is super important. So we're aiming for what you see at the right, is we're all moving in the right direction to support a strategic plan.
Thank you. So next we'll talk about organizational excellence and its alignment to our strategic plan. Our organizational excellence initiative supports the 5 pillars of our strategic plan. Specifically, it focuses on pillars 3 taking next steps and what do we do from there. And finally, developing the standards of excellence within the organization. What direction are we all moving to cohesively as an operations division? Under Pillar 4 of the strategic plan, Every School Equipped, our district support services survey really focuses on that. What services can the operations team provide to support the academic team? And then we discussed that results rollout. It's not just about receiving that feedback, but what do you do with that? How do you create action plans? How do you take steps to monitor that and make that continual progress? Another item under here that we've partnered with Suter on is really training on those service excellence tactics. Year 1 focused on utilizing our guiding coalition to get the foundation of this set up for the district. In Year 2, we're moving toward the next levels of the organization to really begin to hardwire that excellence within the organization. Our values. There are 5 district values, and those are really foundational to drive our organization. One of the things in year 1 that we saw was that we had our guiding coalition working on the standards of excellence, but separately and aside from that, we had a focus group working on our classified performance evaluation and updating that. That needed a facelift. It had not seen any changes in many years. And those 2 groups working separately were really talking around many of the same ideas and thoughts. And ultimately, those aligned to our district values. Those are the standards that as an organization, both groups and we collectively agreed we would work toward. So really, a lot of the work that we have been doing, not just in the creation of the standards of excellence and the updating of the classified performance evaluation, really aligns to our organizational values of integrity, collaboration, excellence, focus, and tenacity. Our district support services survey we have conducted for 2 years now. This is really a great opportunity for us as a district to get some foundational information on what we can do to support Pillar 4 of the strategic plan. On the left, you will see that we have many different responses. Responses ranged from 12 to 39 responses. The audience was our principals who completed this survey, and we asked them, if you did not interact with a department within the last couple of months, please do not rate them on this, because we want to be sure that we're evaluating current standings, current processes. From there, we can set the foundation to make improvement upon. So the lowest response category was planning with 12 responses, and the highest was 39 for the human resource department. The overall average ranged from a 3.78 to a 4.85, depending upon the department. If we move to the chart on the right, the survey asked about 5 key characteristics. Accessibility. Can we reach a live person or use an electronic tool to reach someone? Accuracy. Did we receive the right product or service, or was a variation communicated? Attitude. Was it a nice experience? Did we receive service with a smile? Operations. Do day-to-day operations run efficiently and effectively? And finally, timeliness. Was the response or solution delivered when promised? So as you'll see on the screen, attitude was our highest average rating at 4.43 and our highest top box. Top box is the highest rating that you could give, the percentage of that highest rating. And this was on a 5-point scale. So 60.88% of the respondents rated attitude as a 5 across all of the operations division. Timeliness was our lowest rated category when we looked at this in the fall of 2024 and at 4.02, and operations was our lowest rated top box at 44.71%. So our overall average was a 4.23 and top box 52.12, which Studer had shared with us. Those are good results for a year 1 survey. They also shared that going into year 2, you typically see a lower overall average rating and lower ratings per category. A variety of factors could play into that, depending upon communication of the results rollout, expectations of new leaders in completing that survey, or understanding of what goes into this. So if we start in the chart on the left, same factors, 10 to 34 responses, 10 remained at the planning department with the lowest response rate, and 34 responses were for the transportation department this year. The overall average for the fall of 2025 was 2.93 and up to 4.77 for the departments. Moving to the chart on the right, we want to highlight attitude. That one really remained our highest category at 4.39 and a top box at 58.18. Timeliness was the lowest category at 4.03, as well as the lowest top box at 43.67. So as we look at year over year, our participation, we do see that decreased. It was by 5 participants, but based upon the response pool, that's really about a 15% decrease in the response rate. When we compare year over year, you do want to look at what's considered statistically significant. So that's anything with a 0.05 difference year over year. So the 2 items on here that are considered statistically significant changes are accessibility with a change of 0.13 and accuracy with a change of 0.06. Attitude remained our highest category, and timeliness remained our lowest category in this. The remaining categories really may have seen some change, but were not considered statistically significant. And our overall mean year over year did decrease, but again, not a statistical significance in that change year over year. So as we talk about that results rollout, really, we created an operations division scorecard to share within each of those areas within the operations division. And that results rollout is really about continuous improvement. That's the next steps for us. Because as you get those survey results, you talk to your teams, you get that feedback, put those action plans into place, that leads to continuous improvement. And as we get more feedback and we respond to that feedback, more feedback is given, creating that continuous improvement cycle. The Employee Experience Survey. The Employee Experience Survey is another part of organizational excellence. We partnered with the Studer Group in the spring of 2025 for our first Employee Experience Survey with them. Prior to that, we had created our own in-house surveys that were administered to our employees. One of the great things to highlight on this slide is we have seen a dramatic increase year over year in those responses. As we talked about, that feedback is key to that improvement cycle. So in 2023, we saw 1,557 responses. We had an 8% increase as we moved into 2024 with 1,608. And then moving into 2025, we saw a dramatic increase of 64.5% in responses. We ended up at 2,767 responses. So in that 3-year period, that's a 71.3% increase in responses. So that's very positive. We're getting more feedback and we're able to take more action on that feedback. Our overall mean was a 3.68. Our top box, again, the highest rated category, was a 30.55. That seems really low. So we looked at the top 2 box, which actually came in at a pretty good number at 63.01%. The top 2 box is the highest 2 ratings. In this case, would be a 4 and a 5. And our employee net promoter score was a 9.54. Employee net promoter scores can either be positive or negative numbers. In this instance, that's considered a stable and solid score at a 9.54. Anything between a 5 and a 15 is considered stable and solid in K-12 education. It does vary. I spent some time researching this as to what does that really mean for us as an entity, because different industries have really different net promoter scores. You'll see some that are significantly higher in the 60s and some that are significantly lower in the negative numbers. So for K-12 education, this is a good solid place to be. And then 15 to 30 is really considered a great score in that space, but it is an uncommon response. So we're not that far off from that. So that's positive and encouraging in that regard. From there, each department created their departmental scorecard, because obviously each department in the division has things that they need to work on to increase their employee engagement, which supports our retention efforts. Our operations division scorecard, we focused on a couple of key things that every operations department is going to work toward, which is increasing the district employee engagement mean from 3.74 to 3.89. The way we came up with this is because Studer provides us with a chart that shows what is a reasonable expectation that an organization could make change for in each of those categories year over year. And then we also said we are going to set our goal at our lowest item, which was actually question 12 on the employee engagement survey. I believe organization level information is communicated in a timely manner across the organization. We felt that that was really important to make sure that employees were getting the information that was being shared and that it was being communicated in a way that was relevant and relatable to our employees. So you'll see our progress monitoring is going to be through our operations leader rounding, our meetings with our employees, our one-on-ones, our touch points with those employees to say, how are we doing at cascading this organization level information? How are we doing at cascading department level information? And at the bottom, you'll see some of our strategic actions in cascading that information. This year, we implemented the SWN, the Staff Weekly Newsletter, making sure that we're promoting that in our departmental meetings with employees, that they're aware that it exists. One of the things that we found in the operations division was that some people hadn't been checking their email in such a long time that their accounts became inactive. So making sure that the operations team is partnering with our IT team to get those accounts reactivated so that they can actually access the information that's being shared. It was being communicated but not received. So that was a key piece that we discussed in our division meetings. And also making sure that we are engaging our staff in that DSS and employee experience feedback and ultimately the rollout plan. Their feedback is critical to making our next steps and our actions impactful. Our next employee experience survey actually launches next week, so we're very excited to receive that feedback on January 14th. We cannot improve what we cannot measure. We measure what we value. Not only do we measure that employee experience survey and that DSS survey, which is that customer service survey, but we also partner with Studer for the parent experience and student experience surveys, which actually also launch pretty quickly. The parent experience survey launches on January 14th and the student experience survey launches on February 2nd. So we're very close to those next measurement periods.
Now that we are measuring the important things like employee engagement, customer service, how do we improve upon these things? How do we have these conversations down at the level where the business is occurring on the daily basis? And again, when I talked last time, I said, you're going to see some things in here that aren't mind shattering. They're not new ideas. They're kind of just focusing on ideas that make sense. What you see in front of you on this slide are really some of the trainings that Ashley is going to talk more about our teams that are doing this, which is super exciting because it's the people doing the work that are doing these trainings. But these are some of the simple things that we're going to be talking about throughout the organization. So whether you're a head custodian at Ashton Elementary or you're a food service worker at Inglewood Elementary, you're going to be involved in these trainings and understandings about what does it mean to be providing high levels of customer service in every department. Again, standardization. Simple things like greetings. How many times do you come in and you see the same person every day, or maybe you see a new person walking and you're not always adept to making sure that you're smiling and saying hi and welcoming them. We're teaching that. Listen, if you see somebody walking towards you within 5 feet, acknowledge, say hi, can I help you? And so those are the things that they're not mind-blowing things, but they're important things, and we want to make sure we're all doing them correctly across the district. Again, what's your phone message sound like? Are you making sure that you're returning phone calls in 24 hours? Is that standard in all departments? So again, driving this training to those levels in the organization has, I promise you, never been done in the 25 years I've been here. That is a big feat, and I'm super proud of those things going to be occurring.
So as we talk about service excellence, we've talked about some of the tactics, but how do we get those tactics out to the employees? Because that's the majority of our workforce. So we use the trainer and influencer model. On the screen here, you'll see a few of our trainers. There are actually 45 trainers and influencers within the organization. We asked each department to provide us with some of their trainers and influencers. Studer provides us with a train the trainer model as part of their foundational training to us. But one of the things that we saw at Sarasota County Schools as important in this and a next step for our organization was not just to train the individuals who could train, but also to get to the heart of our people. Because we all know that change does not occur when you're told to make a change, but change rather occurs when your teams are really bought in. And that's where we needed the influencer piece to come in. That's where that comes into play. So the trainers and influencers are really getting consistent information. They go to the same trainings, they meet with Studer, they get the same resources, they participate in the same meetings, but really the difference is the trainers are the ones who are going to present this as we roll this out and conduct the training with all of the employees within our operations division. The influencers, maybe those individuals who are talking to the teams in team meetings, they're really those people that you go to and you say, how do I make sense of this? They're really those people on your teams that are your peers that you may have those types of conversations with. So it's important for us to have both of those components in this model above and beyond what Studer provides to us. So we're really excited for the work that these teams are doing. They actually are going to complete part 2 of their training on Monday when Studer comes back on site, and we start launching that training to all of our employees within the organization February 1st. So very, very quickly here. So leader excellence. So we've started our first trainings on leader excellence with Studer this year. We've done a lot in that space, and that's very exciting. The purpose of leader excellence is really to give our leaders a toolbox of tools to help them be the most effective and efficient that they can at leading and developing our people, which is really exciting. One of the things that they have been training on is the performance curve. So in any given organization, nobody has all high performers and nobody has all low performers. So this is a pretty standard performance curve. One of the things that we've talked about with our leaders is that generally speaking, about 30% of your workforce is high performers, and you may have about 10 that's low performers. The rest remains in the middle somewhere in that solid performer category, and you can break that down into low solid and high solid performers. But how do you begin to move that needle and increase that effectiveness and efficiency within your teams? And that moves us into performance conversations. So some of our employee groups may not be performing and may not be to the most efficient and effective level that we need them to be because of a variety of different reasons. It could be because of their skill. They don't know how to do a better job. So we need to have some more training. So those conversations will look a little bit different if it is about improvement or compliance, their will and desire to participate. One of the things that we really have to focus on is what we permit, we promote. So this really generated some healthy and honest conversations with Studer as we met with them in December and talked about this. Some of our leaders really had some of those aha moments where they said, you know what, I really need to address this piece. They're really great at this, but we really need to work on developing this. And having that conversation doesn't mean they're a bad employee. It just means we have to further that development and help lead them to whatever the next step is. So it was really great and hearty discussion in that and what's next for some of those performance conversations. One of the other leader tools that we've started to talk about is leader rounding. So the goal is for each leader to round on each member of their staff twice per year. That doesn't sound like a lot. It's not heavy. It's not that you're spending hours with them. It's small chunks of time, minutes, where you can break that down and have those conversations. Leader rounding really serves to provide a level of employee engagement and connection to that leader. You're learning about employees. You're having those conversations. But above that, you're getting feedback from them. What are some things that they're telling you that are going well? What are some things that you hear that you need to potentially make changes on? And from those rounding sessions, the expectation is that our leaders are sharing a rounding summary with their teams. They're giving that feedback. We're continuing that cycle of improvement, that feedback loop, where they have 3 themes that they've heard across all employees that they've rounded on, 2 opportunities for change, and then 1 action step that leader is engaging in to make those changes and provide that support to employees. So really this is about hardwiring these rounding and feedback processes for cohesion, continuity, and bringing some leader standard work into the conversation. And finally, we'll round out with our organizational excellence progress timeline. We have done a lot of work this year to move this needle forward for the 25-26 school year. Right now, a couple key things that are occurring, as I mentioned, is the Train the Trainer Part 2, and we will start rolling out that initial employee training beginning in February through the end of the 25-26 school year. This is a really exciting time for this to become ingrained in our employees, in our culture, in our practices, and what we're doing day in and day out. Additionally, we have the Employee Experience Survey launching next week on the 14th, and we will get those results and begin that results rollout for year 2 of that Employee Experience Survey in the month of March. And finally, in year 3 of this, we will move to our academic team for the 25-26 school year. We wanted to share a quote to wrap up our organizational excellence presentation that really sums up what we're doing in this space. Improvement is not an add-on initiative or more work to be done. Improvement is the way effective teams truly work together to get the real work done and to know if their daily efforts are making the impact they want and need in order to add value. So thank you for your time, and I turn it back over to Superintendent Connor.
Well, thank you. Very in-depth. I know that was a lot of information, but we wanted to give you a comprehensive overview of what's been accomplished over the last 2 years and what's still to come, right? This is a work in progress, and we almost never arrive fully, but it is a process that is hardwired into the system. So as turnover happens, retirements happen, people understand what the culture is, and so that takes a lot of time to build that hardwired system in there. But that is, with the help of Studer, where we're at this point, and we'll turn it over to the board for discussion and questions.
Thank you very much. Board members, are there any comments or questions? Mrs. Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to Superintendent Connor and his staff. This is something that the board requested when you came on board, and you got on it very quickly. Ms. Marinelli and I had the opportunity, along with some others here, to be highly trained in Studer. And one of the most effective things for me as a school-based leader and district was the rounding piece. Rounding daily was directly connected to the quality of education we were providing. And Mr. Dumas, you rounded extraordinarily well. I have to mention that in the position that you were in at the time, and we were grateful. But I think that, ingraining it into our current culture is paramount, and particularly with a data-driven focus. So I thank all of you. Sometimes history repeating itself is a great thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Any additional comments or questions? Mrs. Barker.
Thank you. This is fascinating work, and I think very timely when we're talking about the explosion of school choice and being a competitor in the market. And so from my perspective, I'm really curious to see, it sounds like we're not quite there yet, but I would love to see our customer service become really a focal point when we're working with parents and families. And that doesn't necessarily mean we can do what they want us to do, but that they feel like they've been heard and that their question has been answered or responded to. And one of the ways I've heard some districts approach this is that every employee is empowered to help every parent. And that, again, that doesn't mean the school secretary is going to be able to switch your child's class, but it means she can get you to the person who can help you and have that discussion. So I'm looking forward to, as we continue this work, what that looks like for our families, because I think it really makes a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Marinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. It was excellent. And I agree with what Ms. Rose said, and I'd like to piggyback a little bit on the climate of school choice and what that customer service piece is and the culture. And starting with department staff and then going into the schools, because I think the culture that is perceived at some of our schools is one of, and I am not putting a left or a right or in the middle or anything, but this is out there. And with our parents, that there are some schools that when they walk in, they can feel a certain political climate. They get it from the administration and even down with teachers. So I think that is something, as we start working, we need to get back where we are for all. And if we're going to really work on the school climate piece and getting our parents to feel like they want their children to come and they're not going to be exposed to certain ideologies or whatever, that they're there for learning and they're going to be safe. And I that's what I want to see happen as this rolls out even further. And like I said, I'm not accusing anybody. It's all out there, because that's just the climate that's going on everywhere. But I think our schools need to be a safe place and a place where kids can talk and not have to be influenced or even hear some of that. So that's what I want to see happen as it goes down into the schools, that it really is a climate of welcoming for all. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. I think when I look back at wanting to talk about customer service and bringing the student group on, one of the things that I had observed in my tenure as a school board member at that time was that there's been a constant push for every employee to be asked to do more with less and not having enough time. And so what I perceived at the time we engaged with the student group, and I also share in Mr. Connor's gratitude with the Baransics for investing in this this worthy engagement. But what I had sensed is that people are just, here's another thing you got to get done. Here's another thing you got to do. Here's another piece of data that you have to achieve. Is that there was a sense of, I'm working as hard as I can, and this is just good enough, just because I have 7 other things to do. And so what I'm concerned about is that culture, that ask, hasn't really been alleviated. We've, been through lots of changes, lots of things that have happened, redistricting, new schools, schools of hope. I mean, it's just a constant, here's something else you have to deal with. So I love the fact that this is happening. My concern is that it's not getting ingrained into the culture, because a million other things happen. We lose focus. Frankly, we haven't talked about the student group for a long time. So even from our perspective as a board, we should be asking the question of where is that and how is that going? And what do you need from the board to make sure that it does get ingrained into the culture? Not just are you doing your meetings and are you measuring, but what can we do to help you ingrain it into the culture, because a culture shift takes a long time. So a couple of questions that I have just for my own measurement. This is not a judgment on anyone because I empathize with the culture that we live in. Do we have just a general turnover percentage of our employees? I don't care if it's classified, non-classified. Do you have a percentage of turnover rate?
I do. I don't have it with me. Our turnover rate is generally pretty low, but I can certainly pull that and share that with you.
Okay. The reason why I ask that is that's part of, I think, keeping it in top of mind with the culture, and making sure that whatever we're doing has some longevity to it. So that's why I'm asking the question. The second thing is, in our onboarding processes, does it live and breathe well with every employee to say, before we hire you, before you come on board, this is an expectation that we have of you in our processes?
I am so glad you asked that question. Yes, that's actually something that we are very excited about within the HR team. We are working on updating our onboarding process and program, and this will be a key component of that as we move forward, making sure that not only our current employees are trained on it, but our new employees are trained on it before they even set foot into the building to become, board hired individuals.
And may I add to that too, not only at the district level, but then the key in terms of onboarding is not only what happens, generally in HR, but it's the handoff to the department or the handoff to the school. Then what's that second phase of that bringing that new employee? And that's where those conversations need to be happening again. And so, for example, when we bring on a new custodian, what we're teaching our head custodians to do is sit down and talk about our values of customer service. What does it mean to be a custodian at X school? And so not only again at the HR level when you're bringing on the employee, but then down in the department level, I think is where that value, that continuity really starts to make sense for the employee.
And we have developed some things for across all department lines for that onboarding, as Jody talks about, at bringing it to those levels. But that's not something that's really related to the student group. That's something that we've talked about internally as well.
So the reason why I had asked about the turnover rate is that the other place that happens here, and I know that, and rightfully so I want to minimize this in any way, we really do want to make sure that our families and our parents are getting the highest level of customer service because we are in that competitive environment. And that was one of the other big components from my point of view years ago. Hey, yes, we need to step up our level of customer service in a major way. But the turnover rate, from my experience, really does not just measure how well you're doing in your hiring or onboarding and your retention, but it also is a measurement of how well we service each other employee to employee. And that's a part of the conversation that I think that gets missed. Is that when I need something from a department or vice versa, and we're all on the same team of servicing our parents and our students, sometimes we're not servicing each other to the level of what we expect for our families we should expect of each other. And that, by the way, creates a culture where people love coming to work because we're helping each other do their jobs. So I'm not trying, I know Jody said sometimes it sounds simple, and those are simple things, but that is, to me, the turnover rate. And then it connects to the question, my last question, I promise, is I think I saw on here that the completion of the student group engagement is school year 26-27. It will be completed. That would be, we've gone into academics and we've done that. So my question now is, what is our desired outcome after this 3 years? What is that? How will we know this work mattered? And should we continue it because it had that kind of impact? And the question then of employee turnover is a huge question to me. That's all the measurements that you've asked for, that's a big one.
To your question of how does this matter, what does this look like on an ongoing basis, maybe 5 years down the road, the intent of this is to hardwire these behaviors. And the grant provides the funding for the first 3 years to train us as an organization to evaluate and determine what are the most important factors to move forward with. So that's a great thing about that 3-year grant is we learn all of that, we get all of that foundational information, we build that structure and that culture around what we see the needs are based upon what Studer is sharing with us. So the intent isn't for this to be an initiative that ends at the end of that grant period, but it's for it to be an ongoing piece and process for us. Is really to hardwire that excellence, to have, much like you're talking about, that customer service, that each employee, as they come into the organization, they know what the expectations are, know what the standards are, they know what we stand for as an organization, that there's structured training as they're coming on board, and that everybody's operating in that same direction, that systems thinking and alignment, which ultimately leads to higher employee engagement rates and higher retention rates and lower turnover rates.
And to add to that, I would say too, the data piece is, culture is a hard thing to quantify, right? So having that continuous feedback loop through the surveys is going to be really important. So a desired outcome is to see net promoter scores increasing, what that feedback on their top box scores are, so that we're monitoring and responding to that. I think where we're starting to see some really good traction in employee engagement is that we're getting more survey completions, which means one of two things: they have a lot to complain about, or they really know that we're hearing they're hearing us, or they're sending their message and we're responding to that, And so I think sometimes people get jaded a little bit with surveys because they're like, well, no one's going to do anything with it, right? So that's an indicator for us to know that we're moving forward with actually responding. I'll give you a couple of examples, because you talked about something that's always constant, especially now in education, is change. We will always deal with change. It becomes a part of just the way we work. And so, what are the things we buffer and we block out so that we can remain focused on the actual core mission of our jobs? But then how do we build in district processes and procedures to really streamline so that people aren't overwhelmed with so many things? Because at the end of the day, teaching education is very difficult, and there's always a million things that have to be accomplished, and there probably always will be. But what are the things that the district can streamline is where we have to be responsive to that. So I'll give you an example. Obviously, in the summer, we had to make some decisions around some of the positions of how much we were going to allocate of certain positions. One of those at the high school level is the bookkeeper, right? And they had maybe a second or an assistant. So we knew that was going to be a pain point, right? Now one bookkeeper having to do more. So listening and responding to that, we actually had our district staff do focus groups with them, meet with them individually, pull out what those pain points are, and start developing action steps to respond to that and streamline that work, because some of it may be self-inflicted, some of it may be, hey, we just always done it this way and maybe we need to change our processes. So it's looking at that and continuing to review that, having those continuous feedback loops, and actually responding. Another thing we're doing this year is staffing is always kind of a cumbersome process each and every year. So leveraging technology. So Mr. Billinger's been doing a great job with his team. We're developing tools now, electronic tools, to streamline that process so that it makes it more efficient. We're not spending hours on hours having meetings that unnecessarily when we can do that very efficiently. So technology is going to be, I think, as we endeavor into artificial intelligence, that's going to make things more efficient for just the day-to-day work processes. And then just making sure that we at the district level are very cognizant of what we're expecting at the school level so that we're not overburden them with unnecessary bureaucratic red tape type of things. And so to your point, I think we're very responsive to that, and that'll be a continuous cycle of improvement as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to emphasize that the Studer isn't more work per se. It is behavioral, it's your actions. And I do want to again focus in on that rounding, because when you are rounding, and Superintendent Connor, you refer to it, and you are addressing the bookkeeper or a small group in the office, you can look at what is working, what isn't, how can that accountability, those responsibilities be dispersed perhaps in different directions. And when you're rounding in classrooms, you can have conversations about if there is too much on your plate, what's that look like and what can you do about it? But it's those one-on-one conversations, those small group, and that becomes the hardwired cultural impact, but that ultimately should reduce the amount of stress on employees and the feelings of being overwhelmed. And I think it's also important to say, when we look at the results for this, that the hardwiring, the accountability of this culture, this behavior, in my experiences in the district, went on the wayside roughly around 2017. So we're looking at 6 years without those types of emphasis. There were still people practicing it, of course, that it was ingrained in what they did as employees throughout their whole career, but building it into new employees, to how we operate as an entire system, went on the wayside. So I think that when we look at results, we have to understand that 6 years of an institution and the amount of employee turnover that we've had, et cetera, that it's going to take a while to put this back into place and start to see the results of it. But I fully support it and commend you tremendously for putting it as far as we have gone with it. So thank you once again.
Well, thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments. I agree wholeheartedly with everyone's statements here. I think that first I want to say I'm excited to see this. A lot of items that other members had said I had written down. I had experiential and circled around, because I think that's one of the big pieces, whether we're talking about internal or external, that plays a big role as far as retaining great quality staff, retaining families, growing, and stopping the bleed. And I think that Mr. Edwards makes a really good point, and we always do say this, that the one thing that is a constant in education is change. So it is always going to be volatile. And I believe people who enter this profession know that, or maybe not, but then they get braced with it very quickly. But it doesn't take away the fact that it's a pain point. So I think that part of this process is everything that was just articulated is really the buy-in, understanding it's not top down, the frontline pieces, that is huge. I mean, I think none of that's groundbreaking, as you mentioned, it's all rooted in best practice, but actually seeing it through to fruition. And so, Jody, I appreciate you saying, like, we started this, but we didn't, I think even being able to articulate, hey, where we missed the mark before is huge. Because we went down the path, but we stopped short and we didn't get down to where it matters. And so when Mr. Connor's talking about the responsive nature of how we're actually going to that next level, that I hope does allow that cultural shift, because it does take time to shift that culture. And as Mr. Edwards says, but also understanding the time frame that took this. And I think that, some of this can be nuanced and feel like it's one more thing. I mean, I can think of a number of times when I've worked at various larger corporations and you have certain staff members who are like, oh, these guys don't have any idea what we're doing. We're down here, et cetera, et cetera. But if there is an element of, if the communication's in a manner where people really understand why are we doing this? Like, why is it meaningful? And again, that's their buy-in. They end up, if they have to believe it, essentially. Otherwise, it's going to be annoying. It's going to be a burden. And I think that's the things that have to kind of weed themselves out in leadership and on the ground, as far as if this is the right fit, because this is, I love the piece that was mentioned about expectations. And it's been a long time, quite frankly, Ms. Vorobadka, you've taken over a very important department that has not really had any real strong leadership in the time I've been here. And it's one of the most important is your human capital. It's about as vital as it gets. So there's a lot of amazing people inside of our district, but putting those systems in places, I think, is critical. I think that articulating, having a strong onboarding, not just at the central office, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, but that's also followed through at the department level or the school level. So that consistency, because there's been a variety of policies we've talked about, and that you're going to have an organization our size, we're going to have some lack of consistencies in certain areas or variances, but you want them as closely as possible. And I think that the closer we get to that, the better we're going to have customer service experiences. People are going to understand there's going to be less frustration. And again, with all that, the culture changes because people believe we're doing it and they understand the benefit of it. It's not just one more thing for us to do. So I am very encouraged to see this. One of the questions I had, but is already answered, was, what is, anytime we have a pilot or a startup, if you will, how, when we do that off ramp, but the hardwiring has been mentioned many, many times, and I recognize that being the goal and seeing that to fruition. But I do think it is important to reflect and see where do we want to go and are we meeting that. But to me, I go back to every single thing that each board member said, even Mrs. Marinelli, about the experience and the branding and the marketing. I mean, because there's an external piece, we're bleeding, we're understanding that. That's going to be our next conversation. This all plays a really important role into it. And I think when we're talking about putting these systems in places, like I said, I think that the expectation should be very clear that this is important. We want everyone to understand why, and we want them to believe in it because they'll influence other people and who they're around. And if it's just something that they don't really want to get on board with, then I hope we have the ability to make the necessary decisions, because that kind of thing will drag. I don't mean to be negative, but those are the things that need to happen, because I think those start to showcase themselves, and we don't need to, that can pull down all of the great work that you guys are doing. So I appreciate this. I'm looking forward to the continued conversation. And if you do get the turnover rates, can you email them to all of us? All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Connor.
Well, that concludes this topic. Would you like to move on to the next? All right. So I'm excited to give you, the board, an update. As you recall, on November 7th, we approved a plan that we had titled the Future Focus Strategic Initiative. It is a response to making sure that we are maximizing our resources and utilization of our building, being cost efficient and being reliable with our taxpayer dollars. And so today, I want to give you an update since November 7th. It seems like a long way away, 2 months ago, but it's actually only been 26 school days. Because remember, we had Thanksgiving and we've had winter break. And I'm very proud of our team who has worked around the clock and have accomplished quite a bit in those 26 days. While I know some of them work beyond just their contract and they do more than that. So we're going to start with Brookside. So as you recall, Brookside was a part of our strategic initiative to reimagine the school into a district-wide magnet program. focused on machine learning, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, technology, and in partnership with local universities, really building something that is attractive for our students in this realm as we see this emerging technology coming on board, and also looking at portions of the building for repurposing for administrative use. So the reimagining of Brookside will include not only the programming, but looking at the renaming possibly of the building. We are currently surveying our community as to what that potentially could look like. Obviously, that would come with some logos and some colors. Obviously, we're changing the status of the school to just a traditional middle school to a magnet school and offering these unique programs. The survey did go out, and I do have just kind of an update for you at this point. It's been open for just over 30 days. We've only had about 500 responses, but strong indicators for, there were 4 basic titles for the school that we were looking at. Gulf Coast Academy of Innovation and Technology, the Academy of Innovation and Technology, leaving it as Brookside Middle School, and Sarasota Preparatory Academy of Innovation and Technology. Right now, the strong trend is showing whether it be the first or the second choice coming in at 68%, 35% being the first choice, 33% being the second choice, is Gulf Coast Academy of Innovation and Technology. So that is our leading in this survey currently. Brookside is coming in about 46% picking it as its fourth choice. So not even coming in at 1, 2, or 3. Those who did pick it as its first choice, we did have about 31% of respondents pick it as its first choice. As well as just the interest. So as we reimagine the school into a dedicated magnet focused on this emerging technology, what is the interest? We wanted to gauge that. And one of our questions was, hey, if you have a upcoming 6th grader next year, you're currently a 5th grader, you attend one of our schools, what is your interest at potentially going to a school like an artificial intelligence, machine learning, esports, technology type of innovation academy? And so far, the survey strongly says 71% say either yes or I really am considering as a maybe. So that's good. So we see that this is something that our parents are interested in, or at least pique their interest to maybe send their child to this type of program. We're excited to talk about the partnerships that we've been in conversations, and the conversations with the University of South Florida started before all of the conversation about Brookside particularly. We were just in conversations around artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, those types of programs, and this just kind of merged into a beautiful theory for implementation around using our local university and this Brookside programming and bringing them together and creating a tailored experience around hands-on learning with artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, having field experiences using their STEM labs. If you've been to the Sarasota Manatee campus, there is a lab there that has unbelievable technology that students can engage with, and then really collaborating with their professors and employees of the university on campus. One of the other things we're looking for in the partnership is esports. This is a very emerging trend across the nation, and it is highly popular, esports. And so it's competitive team-based gaming experience that promotes collaboration. It really helps them think strategically and problem solve. And it's really preparing students for, careers in technology, but even like the military, where they're flying drones and things of that nature. So this is really taking off, and it's something that we don't currently offer in our district. So we're really exploring how could this be a major aspect of the Brookside program and partnership. In terms of academics, I'm going to kick it over to Ms. Rachel O'Day, our Chief Academic Officer, to talk a little bit about the academic programming.
All right, so this is very exciting. We have the opportunity to do something very innovative and different, and we are very thankful for the commitment that these two partners have made to us. That was the first step, was getting a commitment, not only with the phase of program development, but also through within implementation and beyond. And right now, we're going to heavily rely on them on that program development phase. They're going to help us identify grade level areas of focus aligned to learning progressions, as well as guidance in, as you heard Mr. Connor talk about the labs. What should our labs look like? What types of tools and resources do we need, and how should we be using them within instruction? We're going to also line up adjunct professor opportunities, so bringing in the experts from the University of South Florida and our partners with eGames to make sure that they have direct instructional opportunities for our students, because we know the level of complexity with what we're working through. It may exceed at times what we have the capacity to do, but they are willing to partner not only in development and training us, but also ensuring that they can be boots on the ground and giving our students those great opportunities with those experts, as well as curating our professional learning plan. That's critical and key, and they will be an integral part of that. With that being said, when we look at the curriculum team, as early as Friday, Dr. Green and I will be mapping out the action plan to create an essential tool that is always partnered with any great program, and those are called instructional frameworks. That's the tool that brings together a scope and sequence aligned to state course codes, state standards, and all the new learning experiences that we're going to curate. Project-based learning modules, hands-on learning experiences, as you heard Mr. Connor speak of. When do the adjunct professors come in? When is that reasonable? And that tool is critical for the teachers to implement the instructional learning progressions associated with the program that we develop. That is a very heavy lift, but we will be working with those external partners through that, and that will line us up for what's also very important in programmatic, and that is making sure we're aligned to those course codes. These are the course codes that the secondary team led by Dr. Green has already identified that will be utilized within our scope and sequence and our instructional framework aligned to this innovative program. It's important that we have these course codes aligned because that's the exposure at the middle school level that students need to get ready for those industry certifications that can start as early as 8th grade, but really start ramping up in our high school years. Then again, as I spoke about curating a high-quality professional learning plan, I think we've gotten really good at this between Literacy for All and Math for All and all the institutes and the partnerships with grants. We've been able to do a really good job. And this is going to be very special for just Brookside. And we are going to be providing stipends for them. So the time they spend with us in June to get ready for implementation of this new program, they will be paid for. We will be contracting services with USF and our partners with the esports to make sure that that level of training is where it needs to be. They'll also train our district staff. So we'll be learning alongside together to get ready for that 6th grade cohort, and we'll continue after 6th, adding on 7th, adding on 8th. The benefit of the roll-up is really ensuring that those progressions are working and they're cascading, getting them ready for 8th grade, and then again, that exposure in high school, especially if they want to feed into Suncoast Polytech. So we're very, very excited about these opportunities. Mr. Connor.
Talking about some of the infrastructure upgrades and technology upgrades that'll be necessary for this, I'm going to kick it over to Mr. Benswanger and Dr. Johnson to talk a little bit about the technology, and then we'll talk a little bit about capital.
First and foremost, good morning. It's still morning, isn't it? Yes, good morning. Happy New Year. So Mrs. O'Day and Mr. Connor spoke intentionally about the work that we're doing with USF, but one of the pieces that's incredibly important when you're talking about coding, AI, is the actual technology piece, and do we have the hardware to back this up? I was very fortunate, of course, to support the IT department, so I did reach out to Joe, and what we wanted from him really were the specs. Like, what is it that we need to ensure that this can take place? Well, here's the positive. We actually have some of this already in place. This isn't something that's actually new to us. So from the actual computer specs for gaming, we're good to go, and also for CTE as well. So right now, we have everything in place now, and if we do have to purchase, and I know Mr. Connor has provided you guys some of that additional information, we do also know where we need to get that and how much that will cost as well if we do need to purchase at least one additional lab. Joe, anything you want to add, sir?
No, sir, I think you did an excellent job.
The next part, thank you, Mr. Connor, is about communication. This is incredibly important. One, I want to thank the communications department, Craig's team, and the work that they're already doing and setting up for us. So I want to kind of draw your eyes really to the bottom corner that says the TV and social media. The big piece for us is incredibly important, is actually the name, right? We've talked about everything else that's going on in programming, but we actually need a name and everything else to start pushing a lot of this forward. And so the reason why you notice that we're talking about mid-January is because we will be closing that survey in about a week or so. So around January 11th gives parents an opportunity to come back to actually fill that out. We've had 500. We're hoping for a few more, right, Mr. Connor? Gives them over the weekend. And then by January 12th, we'll actually have that data for Mr. Connor to be able to make a decision based on that, so that we'll have the actual name. As you saw, we have the programming and everything else in place. That gives us an opportunity to push everything out so parents truly understand what is it that I'm signing up for. Because to be very honest, I think sometimes the maybes are that they don't actually know yet. And so, yes, these board work sessions are actually very important because they get to hear this as well. So every time that we communicate out or anything that we say, parents are also hearing. The next pieces that you'll see is actually we are building out a presentation to be able to share with all elementary schools and also additional spin nights. That gives them another opportunity to actually see what is it that Brookside, or whatever the name may fall, that they actually are signing up for. And then another big piece for us really is that marketing that goes along with this. It will continue all the way through school choice window, as we know that is coming up. That is going to be huge for us because remember that 6th grade cohort will be choice. 7th and 8th, as Mrs. O'Day talked about, is rolling up, and 6th grade will be choice. So we know that's incredibly important to give us kind of that starting point of the students who will roll up in that cohort.
We also are working with our communications team around some very targeted ads through TV and social media, and we're able to do that. Now, commercials tend to be very expensive, but now with the way things are with Netflix and YouTube, and it's pretty amazing how you can cast a geofence almost around families that have children in the household, those types of things, and you can really target those ads. So we're working to do that. Not only just with this, but Welland Park as well. So we're bringing all of that in there to really promote our school district and all the different choices that we're offering as we head into this February season of school choice applications. So as we move forward, we have a request for it to see one of those commercials. Oh, okay. We're doing some good work. We'll make sure we'll send that in our weekly update. You'll get to see one of our commercials.
Some of the metrics from last year is over 50,000 views, and most of the spots, if not all of them, had a 98% completion rate. So it works. We raised our marketing last year. 357 new students we had never heard of came into the district. So I know this works, so it's going to be pretty big, especially for Welland Park.
Okay, so that wraps up Brookside for the moment. We're going to move over to Emma E. Booker and Booker Middle School. As you recall, in the Future Focused Strategic Initiative, the idea would be to create a partnership with Junior Achievement and have discovery centers where it's an experience for students not only at those schools but from across the counties and maybe from other counties to have a simulation in hands-on financial literacy where they get a job, they earn a paycheck, they learn how to live life as a citizen. And so the idea was that we would use philanthropic support, community support to build these out and then work with the local businesses and even some Fortune 500 companies to come in and actually represent in the BizTown and Finance Park. So I'm gonna kick this over to Dr. Johnston to share a little bit about that piece and what we have accomplished so far, as well as the other piece for Booker Middle is providing a North County child care facility and where we're at in conversations with the YMCA.
Thank you, sir. If you want to go one more slide over. Perfect. So what I want to draw your attention to is we've already had several meetings really with not only Junior Achievements, but also the facilities team, and I do appreciate them for working incredibly hard to look at the specs and really find out what is the projection and cost that this will run us as we're starting to work towards the next 2 years of hopefully, of course, getting this off the ground. Another piece that's come about is actually we will be launching our fundraiser incredibly soon, and as always, you guys will get the first chance to see it. Working with Junior Achievements. Here's the positive. They've been doing this for over 20 years. And so from website design to commercials to really leveraging our external partners, they're taking the lead with us to ensure that we can raise the funds needed to be able to support not only Biztown at M.E. Booker, but also Finance Park at Booker Middle. The next phase in this, and I do want to thank Dr. Green as well as Chief Minnelli. Alongside of this, of course, remember, it's the curriculum piece that goes along with Biztown and Finance Park. We've already had the opportunity to send M.E. Booker fifth grade teachers as well as their leadership team to Biztown. Because yes, they've heard us talk about it, and Mr. Connor, I think, showed a video at our last presentation, I think he said 26 days ago, but they actually haven't had the opportunity to actually see it and go. I'm fortunate enough to have a sister-in-law who is our district teacher of the year, who is a fifth grade teacher at Emma, and over the holidays, she could not stop talking about how wonderful it was. She really couldn't, and I told her, just be patient. Right? It takes a little bit of time. The next step in that phase, though, will actually be another team with the curriculum team that Chief Minnelli leads. They will be heading in the spring to also visit Biztown, and then Booker Middle in the spring as well will visit Finance Park. We want to give them the opportunity to also get excited. I think I heard Mrs. Ziegler say earlier, it's also our other people who actually rally this and push things forward, right? They can be our mouthpiece. Well, we need them to see that, because we've been the ones talking about it. We've been the ones building this up. Very excited and working with junior achievements. We need them to get boots on the ground to see it, to get excited, so that when parents come and everything else is going on, they're able to really share what's going on. The second big piece really with this project, and I want to make sure everyone's well aware, this isn't just about Sarasota County. This will support multiple counties around us. We want to be that hub, so that Finance Park in Biztown, just like the one that's in Tampa that we're currently attending, will be an opportunity for Charlotte and Manatee and surrounding counties to also join in on that. So really, really looking forward to that. The next phase in that, Mr. Connor, really is, we shared this earlier about North County Child Care, and I really, really want to give a huge shout out to the president and CEO, Gene Jones of the YMCA. We were fortunate enough with Dr. Hutchinson to really do a walk. This was right before winter break. We've had countless conversations about this opportunity and what the space looks like, but they needed to put eyes on it. And right before the break, they did. They were blown away from the location to where we can fence to how many rooms that'll house, and being able to not only have their staff and everything else support that, but be able to bring kids from the community, but also support our staff's children. And so that space has really been perfect. We are working on kind of that next phase in the lease to ensure that everything's in place. And remember, that's at no cost to us. And that really is the big piece for it, and being able to give the opportunity for discounts for childcare for our staff. Wonderful partnership, wonderful meetings that have been taking place.
Yeah. And I also add, too, just any of the upgrades facilities-wise that need to happen in order to execute on childcare, because, you know, there's different codes and things that would be the responsibility of the YMCA as a part of the lease agreement.
Correct.
Moving on from the Booker schools, we're going to talk about Alta Vista, Brentwood, Gulfgate, and Wilkinson. Those are our schools within this plan that will be converting to K-8s. We will be rolling up these 4 schools next year from K-5 to K-6, so moving 5th graders up to 6th grade. And I'm going to give this over to Ms. O'Day to talk a little bit about where we're at with that.
Okay, so yes, as Mr. Connor said, we are rolling up to a K-6, and where we are right now is very much focused on the allocation process and making sure that we are allocating each school based on the enrollment that we're projecting for 6th grade. It is being projected on a range right now because we are doing our family night actually on Thursday. We have 4 scheduled back at the same time, 5 to 6, and making sure that our families within each school are aware of the opportunities that are happening for their 5th graders going to 6th grade. That'll also dovetail into communication plan, which you'll hear about further down the line. But when you look at all 4 boxes, you see we're very much focused on 6th grade right now and making sure we have those allocations for that. And as we move through, that also goes into our athletic plan, because we're not rolling up full-blown sports in middle school. And the case in point to that is, if I'm at Wilkinson, there may be 40 6th graders. And 40 6th graders cannot play every single sport and be starting and backing up and all of that. So we have to do it differently, and we're following models within the state. There are many districts in the state that have gone elementary to K-8, and they've gone on a progression to get to those full implementations by 8th grade. So everything will be on a roll-up. I'm going to toss it to Dr. Johnson to talk a little bit more about that planning that he's done with Dr. Francis.
Yeah, so no, thank you, Mrs. O'Day. And one of the pieces I do want to point out is there will be an opportunity for athletic choice for sixth grade, because that's one of the questions that has come up is if my school does not provide basketball, volleyball, girls basketball, whatever the case may be, do I have an opportunity to go to a traditional middle school and participate? And the answer is yes to that. The second piece that's come up is about intramural sports. At all of our middle schools, not just at the K6, Sky Ranch, Lowell, and Nokomis, it is based on student interest. So it could be flag football, it could be whatever else they're thinking of, soccer, but it is based on student interest. So once we do get those kids in, they really do determine what sports we will have on that campus. And also we do provide stipends because we do need coaches, right? So that's the big part about phase one. Phase two, though, as we start to roll up, and I think Ms. O'Day said, let's just use the number 4 sixth graders. If we were to get 40 sixth graders again the next year and then roll up to 40 seventh graders, we now have an opportunity to offer comprehensive sports in that next year. So phase two will have comprehensive sports in our K through 8 model. The one drawback right now that we're working on is that they may have to do away games when we actually have those home games because of it being an elementary campus. The positive still is we get full participation. Right, and that's really we want our kids to be able to do a well-rounded education. The communication plan. You heard Mrs. O'Day say this. We are welcoming everyone back. So on Thursday, Alta Vista, Gulfgate, Wilkinson, and Brentwood, we will have a 5th grade parent night. That's actually in addition to the survey that was already sent out that's been open approximately for probably, I think, around 20 days and will also close on January 11th. Why is that important? The bottom line is with projections, they're still projections. We really do want feedback from parents to kind of let us know, hey, this is something I'm interested in. I want my child to roll up to 6th grade at those particular schools. So for us, that survey is incredibly important. And then, of course, getting in front of parents. Because one of the things that we've noticed is it's kind of difficult just from reading either articles or seeing newspapers is they have specific questions that they need answers to, and we need to be in front of them to be able to answer that. Hopefully by Thursday when they walk away, they'll feel very comfortable knowing what's being offered as it pertains to classes, as it pertains to sports, transportation, whatever it needs to be as it pertains to those roll-ups to K through 6. We will also be working with Craig, as Mr. Connor spoke about a little bit earlier with Brookside. The 4 K through 8s will also be a part of those social media ads and TV ads as well. We are also building out flyers, right, Craig, building out flyers for every single school because we do want parents to also understand what's being offered across the board. Elementary school presentations are already taking place as well as spin nights. Anything else you need to add, Mrs. O'Day?
Nope, I'll add on the next slide.
Got it.
Thank you, sir. So as you heard Dr. Johnson speak about parent nights, the interest surveys, we're also facilities team, again, doing an awesome job getting in there, conducting those walkthroughs, making sure that we can bring our plans to fruition. They're doing those walkthroughs this month. Last month was challenging. We had a whole, that was our PM2 testing. It was very hard to get in and do these types of walkthroughs, and also ensuring that our staffs had time and families had time to resonate with the plan and not just running in there doing walkthroughs and letting people settle into the concept. So they'll be doing that this month. They're very much, again, focused on the 6th grade roll-up, which really at this time is just looking at science labs. That's what we're looking at right now in facilities walkthroughs for 6th grade. So not a big bank buster, but it is what we need. And then when we move into 7th and 8th, we start looking at art and band rooms and that kind of stuff. So this is a process, and on your one-pager, you'll see where those things are as far as projected budget. But those are projections because once they do the walkthrough and they work with the architects, then they can give the actuals, which we plan to give in 2 months at our next update. Also, that allocation planning is critically important. Our elementary principals are now becoming K-8 or K-6 principals. The scheduling is different for those of you that know that have been in education, a 5th grade schedule versus a 6th grade. So the allocation and the scheduling model and the certifications, once we give out allocations to the district on January 20th, the very next day in the afternoon, we have a work session with just those 4 schools to work through the allocation and the schedule to make sure that we have the staff and the certifications needed to provide everything that a normal 6th grader would get in our comprehensive middle schools. Additionally to that, we have also created pathways to pay for our educators who would like to grow with the K-8 program already at our elementary schools. If they want to seek the certifications that we need, we are going to pay for them. So those principals are working to gauge that interest, identify staff that would be equipped to teach 5th and 6th grade, and make hybrid schedules. So that's very exciting for us in preparing for that 6th grade cohort. Mr. Connor.
Just one additional thing on the slide. As you can see, these are the current logos at those 4 schools. And while they are very cute, we love them. As we transition to the K-8 model, we want to be a little more fierce, right? Because you become more competitive and all that. So we're going to work through the communications team to create some really up-to-date and trendy logos for our new K-8 schools. All right, our last piece here is to talk about the repurposing and space utilization at Wilkinson. There's one additional proposal that I'm going to have Dr. Johnson share with you, and then wrapping up with Heron Creek and Venice Middle School.
Yes, sir. So also with Wilkinson, we looked at repurposing Building 2. We were very fortunate, at least I was, to actually meet Christina Fredericks, which is also the president and CEO of Sarasota Children's Museum. And we had a wonderful conversation about how we could leverage the work that they're doing, but what's already in place with STEAM at Wilkinson. And so also right before break, we actually did a walk. We had already met probably a couple of times over the last couple of months, but as always, they need to see the space to understand, is this a viable option for them? We were able to walk Building 2, and if you think about pulling in the Wilkinson, it's exactly where you see the big STEAM sign right on the right-hand side. And we walked those buildings, and Cece, is what she calls herself, was not only blown away, realized that this really could benefit not only Wilkinson, but the community. Right now, they do have a bus that they use, that they drive around and go to each school, and they don't really have a place to be able to bring kids from across the county as well. And so right now, after we walked it, very, very interested, and we do have to, of course, work on the lease and work with not only Mr. Connor, but the board to see how that works out. But Mr. Connor said this earlier as well. Remember, any build out is not a cost to us. That is a cost to the organization. Our job is to lease that out, of course, to be able to support the community and then also to support that school. Incredibly excited, and hopefully we give everyone a chance to actually see the bus itself so you can see the work that the Sarasota Children's Museum is doing right now. For Heron Creek Middle School, we are working through, of course, remember, this is the one we are looking at South County Child Care. For South County Child Care, we've been working with Sarasota Memorial Hospital. It is still a work in progress. Dr. Hutchison and I have a walk with them on Friday to go visit the site. The reason why we need to walk with them, they had just opened up another child care center recently. I see you guys nodding your heads. And so when we did sit down with them, they don't really have anything in Northport right now, but we also where they're building a new hospital out there. And so even though it may not be right now in the next couple of months, they also recognize there will be a need. It may not be now, but maybe within the next year. And so because of that, that's part of the conversation of, can we not leverage you to get this started off the ground? Because you will be hiring a ton of people that will need childcare in Northport. And childcare in Northport already is difficult. For anyone that lives down there knows that. And so that's going to be a huge piece for us. And we are still working through district managed charter. That's going to be a work in progress. We do have the site for it, but that is an ongoing conversation, as most of you are probably well aware. At Venice Middle, this is a full go, sir. We are moving our early learning office from here, as well as Fiddlers and external partnerships will be housed at Venice Middle. They have a wonderful space that they'll be able to walk in and really be separated also away from our students. So Heron Creek still a work in progress, but Venice Middle still moving forward. And Mrs. O'Day?
Yes, and just to add on about the district managed charter, that was the conversations we've been having with the Dreamers, the founders of Dreamers. And if we were to move in that direction, that would be in that South County area, and that we have a longer runway for that. That's a tall order, one that we can implement and do well, but we want to do it right. So we will be looking into that further down the line, but that's the reference for the district managed charter.
And one additional note to Venice Middle School, as we transition our early learning offices down to those facilities, there is additional space that we are looking with a potential partnership with Laurel Civic Association. They do great work with after-school tutoring programs and supporting students mainly at Laurel Nokomis, but they are working with Venice Middle School as well as Venice Elementary School and even maybe Garden, I believe, some of those students there. So the idea being that their transportation can be hairy at that time. You know, we've got our core tiers that we're delivering students from school to home during that time, and so they contract with us for buses. But that sometimes becomes problematic. By providing some additional space at Venice Middle School for those services, we could potentially alleviate some of that as well. So that's good. And then the last piece here is just in the plan, we talked about the removal of a few buildings, razzing some buildings at Alta Vista and Fruitville Elementary. And in terms of the landing cell, we have a little bit of an update, but we're still working through. We need to go through another process of review for that. We did that a few years ago. It's kind of outdated. So we just need to get some direction from the board on reevaluating the landings and the potential to sell. I see that as probably one of the last things in the rung of the plan that will be executed. But in terms of Alta Vista Building 2 and Fruitville Building 5, they've outlived their usefulness. They're very old buildings. And so just to give you a cost estimate of what that would take, and obviously this would be capital funding, not our general fund, it would run us a little over $1 million to demo those two buildings, which would be cheaper than to actually renovate those buildings. All right, and then just so you know what our immediate next steps, so a lot, again, has been accomplished in 26 days since we approved the plan. But as we move over the next 2 months, our plan is to come back in March and give you some updates. We're going to implement the marketing plan for the new K-8 schools and for Brookside, or whatever the name may be. We may need to have some conversation about approving officially the name of the school with the board, whether that be through a special call board meeting, just so that we can work through a timeline that's appropriate for our community to know about what's being offered. So we'll finalize that name, finalize the programmatics and the curriculum frameworks for Brookside, support our scheduling. Again, it is a little different when you start moving into middle school. So we have all that planned out for those principals to know how to appropriately schedule those sixth graders at the 4 K-8s, and continue our facility walkthroughs. We've been doing that along the way, and we'll continue to do that over the next 2 months. And as we look for solidifying that partnership with the YMCA and other potential partners down in Heron Creek, that will be a work in progress over the coming months, as well as our dual language programming and working with Dreamers as a close partner there. And the last big piece is the fundraising piece. As you can see on the budget that I provided to you, you all have a one-pager that gives you just some projections of all the costs that would be incurred. The biggest one really being the fundraising piece of this, not coming out of our operating fund, but getting community support, business support, philanthropic support to really accomplish this vision of creating these discovery centers in the Newtown area, which I think would be a phenomenal asset for not only Newtown, but for the entire county. That is about a $40 million price tag if we go all in. And so we would phase that. We would start with Emma E. Booker, look at that first, get that experience up and going, and then continue building towards funding for the finance park at the Booker Middle School. And so if you look at that, I'll close with the budget projections. You can see the breakdown of the different costs that are projected for each of the projects that we've discussed today. I want to draw your attention, though, to really the funding source. If you really break this down, it's about a $5 million price tag for these things outside of the Discovery Center. Over $4 million of it is coming out of capital. And I know that's not an endless funding source, but at the same time, it's not impacting the general operating funds, where we can be strategic in how we plan for that. We do that every day. You know, as we have change orders and money comes back from different projects, we can be strategic and bring back some revisions to the board about how to allocate our capital funding to accomplish these goals. And we don't have to do everything all at once, right? We can phase this in this year, next year, and even out 3 years to get some of this done. In terms of general fund impact, it's going to be very, very minimal. Right now, you can see we're under $75,000 on this when it comes to general fund projected cost. The main thing always comes with staffing, like when you roll up to a sixth grade. But here's the deal. Either you're going to generate more students, that generates the funding for new teachers, or you're going to be moving students from one school to the next, which means the staffing follows that pretty closely. So the staffing is mostly a wash, give or take, but as you grow, obviously there's going to be more supports needed. I believe once we hit full K-8 models at our schools, at the 4 K-8s over the next 3 years, yeah, we'll be looking at adding additional administrative support there because now the school's gone from K-5 to K-8. So those are types of costs that they will be baked in to the staffing allocation process, which is just a part of our natural way of work. So to me, it's not above and beyond. It's about where are we shifting our personnel and following the student, because that's where it really should happen. But other than curriculum, PD, a lot of that is going to be covered with our entitlement grants. Title II covers PD, that's what that grant is for. And we can leverage those types of entitlement grants to not impact our general fund. So the good news here is I don't see a major impact to the general fund through the future focused strategic initiative, other than the capital funding piece of that. So that's the projection there, and I know you just got that to review, so you may need to digest that before you have questions, but we were working on this to make sure we had as accurate a numbers for you as possible, so we provided that to you right before the meeting. But at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for a very comprehensive presentation, and in a very short amount of time. There was a lot of work done. It's very impressive. I will get Mrs. Barker. You have some questions?
Yes, thank you. This is, I couldn't wait to talk about this because obviously it's all very exciting. I do have a couple questions. Going back to the budget, and you were talking about the capital funds. I know earlier last year we went over the 5-year plan. When are we scheduled to do that again? Because it sounds like we're going to need to tweak our 5-year plan.
Yeah, and the great thing is we can bring that back as many and oft times. We usually bring it about at least 3 times a year, but if we need to bring it back 4, we absolutely will.
Okay.
So I know the team's already working on that. If anything to add there, Dr. Kemp?
Yeah, we'll be able to bring that back when we get specific cost information for you. We want to bring most accurate information and what changes need to be made to actually accomplish the mission on the academic side and the facilities infrastructure support side to make it work. But we're confident with the figures you'll go through. We're confident with the figures that we have that we're going to be able to meet the phased-in approach for all the K-8s. So that's exciting and good for them.
Awesome, thank you. I love that we are using our spaces to benefit more of the community. That's something I had spoken with Mr. Connor about, I think, before I was even sworn in. I said, I think we have these beautiful spaces. It's excellent that we can share them. I have a couple specific questions, and tell me if I'm getting too in the weeds here. But for Brookside, or whatever we call that now, becoming a magnet school, what does that look like for transportation?
For transportation, we start looking at providing a district-wide transport for the students that are going to be participating in the magnet for 6th grade. And as the 7th grade and 8th graders roll out of Brookside, they're going to be the grandfathered students that are going to be able to participate there. We will be providing the normal transportation that they would have received along the way. So we're looking at the cost associated with that. And of course, that all depends on numbers and how many impact the district-wide transport for the magnet. But we're working on those, and as those get developed, we'll bring that back. But we will be providing transportation district-wide for the 6th grade, as well as continued transportation for those that want to remain and qualify and eligible for transportation for 7th and 8th.
Yeah, and depending on how that looks logistically, that could be, let's just say you have a student in Northport that wants to attend Brookside, right? It's a district-wide magnet. That could be a hub transportation type of scenario where if school starts at, say, 9:30, they could be dropped off with the high schoolers at Northport. Then a shuttle will take them from Northport to the school. That's typically how that's done with the hub project. So those are some ideas that we'll look at in terms of cost effectiveness and figuring out the right.
And those discussions are continuing as we look at the potential impact of countywide transportation for that particular magnet. So that those start times are continuing to be discussed for that particular site.
Thank you. I know that's a question parents have right off the top of the bat. Is there any option for transportation? So thank you. The other question I had, I am so excited about the Children's Museum wanting to partner with us. My goodness, I would have been all over that a couple of years ago. Is the thought around that, Dr. Johnson, is that it would be open to the public, or would it be just specific to our students?
Sorry about that. It would be open to the public, just like where we would work through either Finance Park or Biztown. But it would start with students, of course. We would have to work around the schedule. But yes, and even fencing would be a part of that as well to ensure that they're separated from our students. And that's also the case even at the Y as well, that we would have at Booker Middle. So we did have also facilities walk out to make sure where is it that we can draw the line to ensure that drop off, all those different pieces are also accounted for.
Okay, wonderful. One more question. I haven't heard any, I know the Florida House is kind of in this geographical region. Is there any discussion about how to leverage that resource within this? We're looking at STEAM and the Children's Museum and all this. I just had that thought.
No, that's a great point. We have not landed exactly where we're going to do on the Florida House because of the just how much has changed as a result of the Future Focus Strategic Initiative. So there have been thoughts about what to do with the Florida House, but now that we have some new context around this programming, we're kind of going back to square one and saying, okay, let's make sure we make the right decision before moving forward. So to answer your question, no, we haven't landed there yet.
But it is in kind of discussion.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you. I think, one more general question for you, Mr. Connor. People are asking me fairly regularly with regard to the Matter Academy and the notices they sent out. Have we had any additional communication from them? I know in Duval, they rescinded several of their notices, and so have we heard back? I know we put out our communication saying this doesn't work for us because of the Future Focus Initiative, but have we heard back from them?
So we did get correspondence back that stated that they received our notices and that they're reviewing them. And that, of course, depending on what decisions make, if they were to move forward with an appeal, they would contact us at that point. But that was a few days after we submitted those notices, and we haven't heard anything yet. So I think it's still out there, just pending as to what their decisions are for us particularly. But I think we have a strong legal argument as to why physically and logistically this would not work for our schools that they've selected.
And remind me, is there any timeline on their end for them to get back to us or no?
I'll check the legal aspect on that. There is none. Okay. According to Government Affairs, there is not a legal timeline.
Alrighty then. Great. Good times. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And Dr. Johnson, superstar. Thank you for all you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. This whole conversation is an example of out of adversity comes incredible opportunity and excitement and enthusiasm. And I commend Mr. Connor and your team of 26 days. I mean, that's unbelievable. And I know it's significantly more than 26 days. I can tell from this just in budget. So I have to congratulate all of you on so many wonderful things that are being presented around the K-8s. I know so many parents have been saying for a long time that having a smaller, more neighborhood feel around a middle school, and I think that's going to really enhance our position with attracting more students. Only one place that I'm somewhat concerned around the Brookside relationship with USF, and it sort of falls into the category of what Mrs. Marinelli had been speaking before about ideologies and relationships. USF is right now positioned to be part of New College, and I think if we're really going to have that partner with USF, that we pay very close attention to our MOU and make sure it's specific to those areas and not anywhere outside of the realm. So I love USF. I love the opportunity. I love the partnership. But I want to make sure that, because I know the public will start asking questions about that, I want to make sure that we've encapsulated the relationship specific in USF and those specific areas. My question is a couple of things. I know there's a lot happening between now and the choice deadline. Do we need to get more information out quickly to elevate our communications to the families to make sure that they are meeting those, that they all know that we've leveraged that information as much as we can?
That's a great point. I do want to reassure the board too, and to our community, while we have set windows, remember they're self-imposed. And we're going to have a very flexible window, especially this year, but really we need to examine this moving forward, right? In the era of school choice, is there a possibility to reevaluate how we have rolling windows? And, do we do it one time a year, multiple times a year? All of that is in conversation about how do we move forward so that we do remain competitive. And when parents say, listen, I'm in this particular scenario at this school, there's an opportunity at this school that I'd rather take. It's not in February or it's not next school year. Can we have an option for that? And I think we have to be responsive to that. And so to your point, being flexible is going to be key.
Thank you. That makes me feel a lot better around the timeline of choice, because I know a lot of that is condensed and coming up. The timeline for the fundraising, the two significant price tags, $40 million around the JA. Do you have a timeline as to we need to have X amount by such and such date in order to put shovel in the ground? Has that been explored? And I know in our read-aheads that some of that looked like it had already been assigned to architects and construction firms, which typically is outside of how we do that kind of work. So I just want to make sure that we're following all those guidelines and that there's a timeline that's connected so that we're moving forward. I think they're great ideas. And I would love for the board, because we all have contacts in the communities, to maybe help with those fundraising endeavors.
You want to address the architect piece?
Yes, just to be clear for the community, we did engage architects as part of a study to get an estimate to see what the cost would be for Booker Middle, to convert the Emma Booker and Booker Middle to where we needed them to be for the BizDown and JA initiative. So that was brought on as a market study.
All right. In terms of the timeline, the goal is to work with Emma Booker first, right, and get that going. I think that's an easier lift for us. So the timeline in terms of goals, we're working with JA because they're really the experts in raising this type of capital. And so that we'll be able to, I think, share with you maybe at the March board meeting of what that looks like. In ideal world, we'd love to launch 27, 28. At Emma Booker, but of course that's all going to be contingent upon all those pieces with the fundraising and then of course the upgrades themselves. But we can bring a more solidified timeline and milestones at our future update.
Listen, for 26 days, I'm very content with all the information that you've given me. But to the place, because that's the biggest number that we're looking at. I appreciate that all of these changes and all of the work that you put into it seems roughly cost neutral, that we're absorbing that, and that's great. But that big price tag, which I think is another way for us to attract families to be part of our district. I just am looking for we need to have 2/3 of the 14 million by such and such date in order to put shovel in the ground is kind of what I would need as a board member to help with those fundraising endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Mrs. Marinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The work that you all have done in 26 days is just incredible, and it's exciting. We haven't had anything like this in such a long time. So I just want to share that, just a few things. I think it was Mr. Edwards that brought up, or but that window of school choice, having that flexibility, because, you know, it is so rigid right now. It's just like, and you have to refer parents to the superintendent that, you know, if they've just moved here. So I'm very glad. And that also aligns with the Studer and that whole customer service. So, which, if parents are new to here and they don't know the whole process, so I'm glad to hear that it's going to be fluid. And I'm sure that'll require some training. But the one thing that has been brought to my attention by parents, and it's from the schools that feed into Brookside, that their child has a learning disability. They're in mainstream classes, they're in resource, but reading is the problem. You know, they probably don't pass their FAST tests. So for the new Reimagine Brookside, that's, I don't even know if you've got that far, and that's okay, just to keep that in mind, because parents, they want their kids to be able to do that. And if it's hands-on, you know, they could probably succeed, but knowing they're going to need that support. So, because they would like their kids to go to Brookside and not have to go to one of the charters. And so I think with that whole thing, keep in mind that if we can accommodate, and they're not behavior issues, it's strictly the reading. And so that's just something I'd like to have you guys think about, because we'd be able to pull from you know, Southside and Philippi, and they'd go. So, but thank you all so much. It's exciting, and I'm glad to hear the teachers are excited, and even though it's overwhelming, but it's really, it's great, Mr. Connor. It's because, you know, you inherited all this too, so it's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rose.
Thank you. Obviously, phenomenal future-focused projects. Can't say enough about it. It's just exactly what we need to be doing for the community. And for me, I need to state that it isn't about Schools of Hope. It's about what we should be doing to provide the highest quality education in the community, and going from great to greatest in a world that is competitive and becoming more competitive in education. And I'm all for that. The more competition, the better we're going to get. And some of the programs are proven programs. And when you look at AI being in hand right now, and we're enveloped in it, I know that Brookside had an extraordinarily successful Academy of Technology with a waiting list, and those teachers retired now. We're so excited that they came in about this initiative, that they came in to see Superintendent Connor, and I thank you for meeting with them. That was great. And Sarasota Middle School had a gaming program waiting list, and it did have a state curriculum course code, so those have existed. But point being, these are proven, successful waiting list, get excited for students' programs. An anecdotal at Alta Vista, which is a good anecdotal, I had the opportunity of visiting with a young lady, a fifth grader, who was talking about her family was moving out of county. They were planning her going to a traditional middle school, and when they heard the news that Alta Vista was becoming a K-8, the family completely and totally changed their plans. This young lady had been at Alta Vista since kindergarten, and they are now staying in Sarasota County. But I thought that was, and they were excited about it, celebrating the opportunity to stay in the school they knew well, the community school. I want to, it's a touchy subject, but I think it's one that we need to recognize. And I thank Miss Marinelli for bringing it up. I don't think that we are, as a board, speaking to it. And I, too, get communication and have for probably several years about politics in our schools. And I will say that you are, Superintendent Connor and your staff, you are working at neutralizing it, and I see that becoming more neutral, but there are still some places where it is thriving, and parents are actually speaking to it. And when we look at this competitive world, and we look at what you've done in 26 days, you are bringing back innovation that was missing, in my experience, for multiple years. We have a thriving communications department. I feel like we took marketing in 2018 for several years, and it became very generic, where everybody put their programming in a template, and it wasn't the kind of competition that we need to have in today's world. And I'm fully confident that that talent exists and has existed in other ways in marketing our district, and I'm looking forward to that. Marketing is a key piece. But speaking of marketing, the best marketing, and this takes back to neutralizing the politics, is word of mouth. Even though I know that our communications, it will do absolutely wonderful things, word of mouth is top of the game. So I think that we need to focus in on the wonderful things that are happening, the competition at hand, and neutralize the politics. This isn't about for me, it's not about what our legislature is doing. It's about what we're doing to become the greatest and the most competitive. And whether, we talked about, you presented partnership with USF. I got my master's at USF. I love USF. Think it's great to have it in the neighborhood, but I also love New College. And whether it's USF or New College or such, or State College of Florida that we're partnering with, I think that that's going to make us great. So I thank you for your work and the progress. And I think that I want to throw into the mix, because we've talked about a lot of innovation, a lot of greatness that is been occurring, but what you've also done with academic achievement. And Superintendent Connor regularly reminds me that it is still thriving and on point, and that is something that is at the heart of what we do, and you're doing a phenomenal job with it as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is remarkable. I know everyone just said this, so I don't want to belittle it, but it is extraordinary what you guys have been able to do in such a short amount of time. But it's also incredibly exciting. So I know it's stressful, but I feel like this change is being very much embraced, as opposed to other ones that we've had to experience. So I could not be more excited. I like the innovation. One thing with Brookside, I know something was mentioned about like the maybes, and I don't know, I'm not a developer at all when it comes to tech at all. I always am pushing classical, as you all know that. But I'm wondering, and I don't know how hard this, but is there any kind of like experiential, because they don't know we don't know what they're gonna be walking through, right? But is there anything that can be, and again, I don't know if that's something that can be created or if that's really hard to create, but is there something that they could experience and see, some virtual, kind of going right in line with what we're going to be doing there, but I'm picturing a virtual reality thing, but that probably is over the top. But I'm thinking, is there something that could be done that's out of the box, but that's giving them kind of walking through what it really look like versus just words on a piece of paper? Just a thought. Because that's the hardest part about some of these decisions is you're taking a major leap of faith in what we're promising to deliver. I believe we can do it. I have absolutely no doubt in it, and I think it's going to be better than what we even expect it to be. However, I can understand as a parent being like, the downside of school choice, I'll say, is the amount of bouncing around. I hear it all the time, and I try to avoid that as a parent, but that's to each their own, just because I believe that the continuity is directly impactful to the quality and their ability to be successful in academics. But I also realize that because there are so many options out there, that more families are inclined to make moves. And so I I say that because I don't know how many what the split is, if there people are willing to take a leap of faith and jump in, or if they need a little bit more clarity, because I think this is being offered. I think it's the numbers that you put out there from the beginning are very promising. I think we need to get a little bit higher, but I think that you mentioned the maybe. So if there's some creative way, again, I have no idea if that's like, haha, that would take like 5 years to develop, Bridget. Okay, so I have no idea, but I'm just trying to think because it would line up very well with what would be presenting and offering. So, and even if not for this year, maybe that's something we can look at for the future because it does line up very well. I know that I mentioned this to the superintendent. I'm going to put this out there again because I love all these different ideas and trying to find different partnerships. When I look at the state of the market, homeschooling growing, micro schools growing, those are the two most rapidly expanding ones, I believe, and I don't see that slowing down. I also have my ear to the ground pretty closely with a lot of families that are done micropods, micro schooling. Some are trying to find brick and mortar locations. Some do it it's kind of like a homeschool. They're doing it like someone's living room, but they don't have the financial, they don't have enough capital or the financial setup to go expend funds to rent or do some kind of massive build out. So if we find ourselves that some of these don't come to fruition, and I don't know what that exposure is for, like, what's our runway when it comes to Schools of Hope? And again, I'm not trying to use them as a reason, but I also know it's looming out there and I don't want us making bad decisions. But if we need, I'd like to find a way where we can, if we can, bring in revenue. You have a classroom that's being emptied. It's not a whole big school. I know I'm sharing what I've shared with the superintendent, but there's a difference. I think when you're talking about a massive, like two large schools within one school, there's a bit of a competitive nature. But if you're talking about a micro school, they're completely set up differently. They have a different environment. There's much smaller. They literally operate in a classroom. But why I like this idea as a potential, as something I think we should keep in the back of our minds, is that it brings in revenue, but it also introduces families back into our schools and they see it in real time what is happening, and hopefully it's a good experience, because I don't know how long those micro schools will last. You know, they might be short-lived. We saw a lot of them after COVID. Some have continued on because they don't like what's happening in certain, the environment with some of this public schools or private schools. I mean, I guess it's both ways. So I want to put that out there to the board because I can't talk to you guys any other way, but I think that is something that we should look at if some of these don't fall through or there are other areas of capacity, because the more we can get families into our schools and see the great work, most of the time, and as long as following through with all the things we just said and hitting those expectations and understanding the professional practices and what we expect in our schools, I think we have an opportunity to reopen and open that door. And I think that at least will level us off, because we do need to look at it from a enrollment standpoint and trying to not just keep it flat or continue declining, but trying to get people back in. And so there are a lot of things that we talked about at the beginning today that I believe are important to sustaining and giving confidence of the environment. But I also think this would provide some opportunity from a revenue and introduction. So I'm throwing that out there because I do think it's something we should consider as we look at some of these options. The final thing I'll say, I don't know if this is final, but I will add to this. When it comes to JA and the fundraising, because that's big numbers, but you did mention that's what they're used to. They have, I'm assuming, corporate sponsorships that they go to pretty frequently, I'm guessing. So I think Mr. Edwards hit on this too. I think the timeline of, and you said March is probably, we'd have a little bit more insight into what that looks like. Okay, so I'll just wait till March for that. And no, I think we covered everything else as far as the choice deadline. I would love to see the choice deadline be amended in general. I think if we're talking about, and I think our choice team has changed over the years, and I think they're very good now. I feel like they're more accommodating to talking to customer service, very proactive, at least everything we've seen here too. But I do think that is a great idea. And no, I think I covered everything else. Everyone did very good discussion. I will point out, I will just say this because I have this circled, the USF and New College piece. I recognize we may have a difference of opinion. I think that if there is members of the public that have an issue, it tends to be a very small faction. They're very loud, but I know that there's a lot of people who will support that. And I will go on record that I support it and that I am excited to see those collaborations move forward. And I won't be deterred for loud voices. So with that said, I'm very excited about the work you guys are doing. I appreciate the opportunities that we have ahead of us. And what do you need from us, Superintendent?
Good question. I'll come back in March as we start to flush out a lot of what we have shared today. And we start to see the realities of cost and we see all of that. We'll bring that back to you. And things may change. Some of these partnerships may not come to fruition. We're still exploring a lot out there, but I did think it was important to share with you and the community where we're at so far in the process, because we do know next year, August is going to be here before you know it. And we will be launching our K-6s in Brookside. So a lot needs to happen there. And we've got a good game plan as we shared today.
I do have a question. I'm sorry, and I'll go back to this later. Now that I think about it, is there any kind of, when we're looking at the projected enrollment and we look at a certain time of the year, May, what have you, and we're not getting, or is there a point in time where we're seeing the numbers aren't getting to the level that you had expected, that we have to change course, or pretty comfortable with?
The two major time frames. You have the spring allocation process, which is preparation for before you go off for the summer of what you think you're going to have based on roll-ups and what the data is telling you. And then you have the fall, what actually shows up. And you really, everything in between.
Okay.
But if we start to see trends where we're seeing declines, we can make some adjustments here and there with that last summer. But really we'll know in the fall exactly where we're at. But typically we can be flexible within a school. If some numbers aren't showing up, we can redistribute staff to accommodate for that. But there's always an adjustment period. After the 10-day count, then we go through another staffing process, which means teachers can shift from one school to another because enrollment has declined here, but it's gone up over here. And so it requires that process. That's the normal cycle of the staffing process, and that will continue to happen.
Wonderful. Mrs. Barker, sorry, I didn't realize you guys had.
Thank you. I just had one more question. Is there any policy work that needs to happen as a result of some of these new directions that we're going? I'm thinking particularly with regard to leasing space, and do any of our policies need updated to include leased space and what our expectations are around that? It just, that thought came to me, and to piggyback on that thought, if we're looking at e-gaming or esports or cooperative gaming, do our policies already cover that? I think our AI one is pretty broad and solid, but I'm just throwing it out there. I don't have the policy book in front of me, but do we need to be thinking about our policies and whether they need any updates?
Yeah, and we'll incorporate that as a part of the cycle as well, because I know we'll bring, we actually had policies ready for this workshop, but we're going to wait until the next. But yeah, that's an ongoing review. But the one thing that comes to mind is just the naming of a school policy. If we do change the name, we may be a little flexible on that. In this special circumstance, if there's I'll take a look at that policy. We'll review it to see if we're in compliance there. Did you want to add something?
And we do have policies about utilizing or lease space to outside entities at different times. And we've been working with legal counsel to draft up these lease agreements that we can work through with any of these outside entities to make sure that, you know, we're the ones drafting the initial version of them based on our needs and our desires, and then going back and forth to collaborate on anything that needs to be kind of ironed out within there. But from the K-8 perspective and the athletics that Dr. Johnson talked about, I've been working with Dr. Francis as well. That would all fall under what our general athletics policies are. We are working through some things with additional AEDs at schools if there is any need, and kind of doing a review of all of that to make sure that we do stay in compliance with the policies that are currently in existence.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
That was a great question. Mrs. Rose.
Yes, real quick, one last question of, given all of our conversations on the future focused projects, when can we expect a academic progress monitoring update? I know we're getting in that time frame, and that gets me very excited, so I was just wondering when that might be coming out.
Sooner than you think. It actually will be at our next workshop. We've finished up PM2, so we'll be ready to share the progress from that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mrs. Marinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When you mentioned the micro schools, and I never even thought about using space in a different way like that, but don't we, with homeschool students, they can come for ESE help, and they can come for sports, and they, in the past, could come for certain courses. So that got me thinking, we already addressed that in some ways, but that might be another way to be thinking, to get, like you said, families to see, well, this is an okay environment. Like, my kid's going to learn, they're not going to get all this other stuff, and, maybe it's another revenue way they might not come for everything, but they would come for enough where, I don't want it to be pop in, pop out, that's hard, but that's just another way of maybe thinking of getting families back to come and revenue for the school district. Because that never entered my mind until you mentioned that.
So I think, I've thought a lot about this. This conversation was initiated by Ms. Ziegler, and I think some of the consternation that I have is the outside micro schools coming in and leasing the space, just with the legalities of, liabilities and things of that nature. So it got me thinking about and if we're using Florida Empowerment Scholarship as an example, right? If these students are not with us, they're taking in a Florida Empowerment Scholarship, what if we created our own micro schools where we have a teacher that's funded essentially through the interest of whoever's taking these Florida Empowerment Scholarships? Let's just say we've got 15 kids that want to be in a micro school setting, and we have a teacher at a particular site that is our employee, and they take advantage of that setting because that's their choice. I think that's kind of where I'm moving towards. Is it more of a public micro school, but it also uses the flex? So there's I think, to your point, we can a la carte services through the Florida Empower. We are a service provider. We're registered with Step Up. It's a matter of what services are we going to provide. Are we going to provide the ability for a student to come in and take that AP calculus course because there's no one at home to do that? So those things are already in existence and are starting to trend in certain districts. But around the idea of micro school, if that's the setting that parents want, then we need to get in the game.
Right.
To your point, leasing the space is a revenue generator, but even beyond that, if we can control the staff and parents can opt into that, they can use their scholarship, and then we can create that same type of environment on our campus. That's another innovative way to generate revenue and control. So there's some ideas there that we can explore, because I will say micro schools are exploding. They are. Nationwide. There's been the estimate nationwide is there are over 2 million students in a micro school setting.
Makes sense.
And so we've got to think creatively around how we can keep students in our system, but also meet the needs of our families. And so,
and I agree totally, and I think that's where this board collectively, we need to rethink and open our minds of, this is what's going to be best for us to be innovative. And if that's having our own, I never thought of that either. So that's why these kind of conversations are very good to, what can we do? How can we get the students back to us and give what parents want?
right. And a part of the conversation is around the economies of scale. Right?
Exactly.
And micro schools are very small, and there is a breaking point when you're operating a school. There's infrastructure costs, there's fixed costs, there's all of these things. So I think the magic in making it happen where you can have this micro school setting is finding where is that financial breaking point, right? If I want to have 10, 12 students in a classroom, is that funding enough do that and to be, not be in a deficit. So those are the types of things we would figure out. But I'm very much open to exploring a public micro school concept in some of these spaces where we can meet the needs, but the finance piece is what we want to work out. And I think there is opportunity with the Florida Empowerment Scholarship.
Thank you.
All right, well, so that technically finished that agenda item, so I will open it up to general comments. If anyone wants to start, or I can go down the line, I'm really indifferent. Does anyone have any comments? I do. Mrs. Marinelli.
Thank you. This is reading the news or listening to the news and reading, the whole budget, and I know you are on top of it. Everybody is working on that. With the possibility of somebody from DOE or whatever is going to be coming down and looking at our budgets, I have no doubt that, we would do fine, but I know you're on top of that, because I want us to be on top of that. If they do pick Sarasota, I want them to see that you are really working, everybody's working, the board, to utilize every dollar and be innovative. And so I just wanted to put that on the radar a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very used to those audits. We just went through a very, very large operational audit, and I'm always more than welcome to get different perspectives. I think that when you look at our budget, 85% of our budget is in salaries and benefits, right? I mean, I think we're doing a pretty good job of making sure that we're compensating our staff appropriately. They can always earn more, but we've really, we definitely have to be cognizant, because there are financial constraints and headwinds that are on us now and will continue to be on us full court press as we move in to the next school year. And so I'm looking forward to the conversations around how we do some corrections, right? Making sure that we are living within our means, we're living within the funding that we generate and the revenue that we have, and making sure that we are efficient with every dollar, because I do think we have to put it as much into our human capital, our salaries, our benefits, our compensation, because we are a people business. That is how the work gets done. And so, but at the same time, there is a breaking point there where you put yourself at risk financially if you're not careful. And so I think as we move into the conversations around budget, as we move in the next couple of months, there is a lot to consider around the constraints that we're seeing. There's a lot going on with declining enrollments. Birth rates are falling. We're seeing the opening of another charter school next year, which is projected to move 500 students out of our system potentially, if they choose that option. So, and that's just two things out of about 12 things that are really going to be a pressure point for us financially. There's definitely a plan to make sure that we remain fiscally stable and that we're solvent and that we are delivering excellent service and academics. All of that is there, but it comes with making sure that we put the right constraints and the right measures and the right expectations moving forward of how we expend our revenue. And so I'm looking forward to those conversations. They're going to be hefty. They're going to be a lot that we need to consider as a board, but we can get through it and we can get there. So looking forward to those conversations.
Thank you, Mrs. Marinelli. Any other comments? Nada?
I do.
I think Mr. Edwards, did you?
No, go ahead. I just want to bring, because it was brought up by several board members today around just political conversations, political climate, political things in our schools. And I want to be very clear, the expectation, our teachers are delivering excellence each and every day when it comes to instruction. And I understand that there could be pockets of positions, what people share personally, that's always going to exist in an organization as large as ours. But I want our teachers to know, I want our administrators to know, I want our community to know that we're not about politics in our schools. we're not here to teach politics. We're not here to push or persuade one way or another. We should be neutral. We are about having civil discourse. We're about having logical reasoning, critical thinking, but we are not here to tell a student how to think. We want them, or what to think. We're here to teach them how to think, right? And so I just want to make sure that as the culture continues to evolve in our public school systems, we're not advocating for a political party or a candidate. We're not persuading people to think a certain way. We're not shaming people if they don't believe a certain way. That is not what our schools are about. We don't stand for that. We stand for making sure that our students understand the academic expectations around the standards that we're entrusted to teach our students. And so we make sure that everything that we approve as a board, our materials go through a vetting process. Our teachers receive training. There are Florida approved standards that we are expected to teach. Our curriculum frameworks are built in a way that doesn't focus on a position. It focuses on teaching students academic rigor and standards and meeting those expectations. So I want to make sure that that's clear, that there shouldn't be a pressure or a climate or a feeling of walking into a school and this is how I have to think or I have to fit in. That is not the type of culture that we want in our school system. We don't need that type of environment anywhere. We should be neutral, but we should also invite, even when it's controversial. There are topics that are controversial that we want students to engage in and set those parameters. And teachers understand how to do that, not to push a perspective, but that you're sharing multiple perspectives around maybe some controversial issues. So it is not the tenor of this administration to push one side or the other. It's about teaching academic excellence. And I think that's where we have to remain right in the middle and focus on that. I know there's a lot that goes on in the media. There's a lot that goes on in terms of politics in general, but that is not what our schools are about. Our schools are not built for that. We're here to teach critical thinking, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So while I know that the reality of what people experience may differ sometimes depending on maybe a class or a school that they attend, we will continue to work to make sure that that culture is neutral, but it's also inviting to having civil discourse in a way that promotes a very rigorous academic experience. I just wanted to add that.
Here. Mr. Edwards.
Little concerned that, and I think it's a perception that we as board members get. People are going to make complaints to the people that they think are going to hear them more than someone else. So you might be hearing something that I would never hear. Mm-hmm. So that's not been my experience. In fact, my experience is from the other side where teachers often say to me, I'm afraid to say certain things because I don't want to have kids tell their parents and then call me. So I think I appreciate what Mr. Connor says because that's been my experience about how our schools are run and how our administrators coach their teachers and all of those types of things. So the place that I really did want to bring up today in member comments is that even on our board, there are, I think we're all advocates of school choice. Some of us like all of the school choice and how the vouchers are utilized. I would carve it a certain way and make it a different kind of way. That doesn't mean that we're all opposed to choice. It just means that some of us might view things a little different. It's a spin that Mr. Connor put on micro schools. I like that thought a whole lot. But when there's a place that we can agree, and I think I may have found something, and I hope that the board will concur, especially Mrs. Ziegler and I probably don't agree that today is Tuesday. but here's a place that I know we do share. I'm highly concerned about technology and cell phones and AI and the human interaction that's connected to those places for our students. From a mental health capacity, I've seen students and children go into rabbit holes that are dangerous. And as a school board, I think it's our responsibility to take a hold of that conversation, and particularly around the work that we're doing at Brookside. I think there's an opportunity for us to really start to examine way in advance of kids getting into middle school and to start having healthy conversations and healthy curriculum about how to use social media, what the algorithms are, all of those types of things, so that people are approaching technology as a career option, not as a life option, and going down. So, and the other place of this that I think we at Sarasota can really grab a hold of is that when I'm out, this is completely nonpartisan. Parents talk to me all the time. They don't know the answers themselves. They don't know how to guide their children themselves. And so while we're developing these kinds of curriculums and opportunities for kids at Brookside, or whatever it shall be called in the future, I think it's a great opportunity for us to start thinking about how we proactively start having technology conversations about what is healthy of how to use your cell phone and how to use technology and how to have human interaction instead of on the phone or those types of things. And I think I have several great things that I can refer to the superintendent that I think actually merit presentations in a workshop where we're hearing from experts who are examining these kinds of things. To me, that's a place where we would better spend our time, better spend our perceptions, even though they may not 100% align, but can we get consensus to really be on the front end of making sure that our students truly understand all of the perils of technology, because I don't think anyone's doing that correctly.
Amen. But that's nothing new. Go ahead. Yes, absolutely, of course.
I agree that middle school's too late.
Yeah.
My initiative is pre-K, working with parents and kindergarten to educate parents that are putting technology into the hands of their children and not realizing those deep, dark places that can become visible to their children. And you never keep up with technology. As the middle school principal, every time I thought we were on it, our adolescents were way ahead of us and way ahead of their parents. So I think it is when we first meet parents entering the system, there are model schools in cities like New York, private schools that do that quite successfully. And it's something that's decided before students even go through the primary grades, how the parents are going to work and minimize, I should say, because when you work with parents, my experience of working with parents and cell phones, it's a huge safety issue. I know when we had lost students, we found that student through pinging their phone. So it's how do you start to do that before you put the technology in the hand of the student? So I think it's something that we discussed it in 2017. We were discussing this, and I was strongly advocating for the first time we meet parents, but it never occurred. But it's definitely an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Barker.
Thank you. That triggered a thought for me when I was going back to looking at Brookside and a possible partnership with University of South Florida. There's a slide about an AI roadmap workshop for K through 12 schools. And I learned recently, lots of districts are dealing with the same thing, looking at AI education, pre-K through 12, technology education, and it being developmentally appropriate. Yeah. Is really important and aligned to standards. When I was looking at our standards, we do have some of that already, do we not? Have some technology and AI education and our standards. My point is to say maybe that's something we need to continue looking at and making sure that we're updating what we already have, because I very much agree with Mr. Edwards and Mrs. Ziegler that that's something we should look at in a developmentally appropriate way, because the way that children's brains process information is different a 5-year-old than even a 9-year-old.
I'm going to comment, Mr. Edwards, I'll bring it back to you really quickly. I couldn't agree more, as noted. I have for a long time, I think 17, 19, et cetera, and it's, and I think the data is even more alarming. I know Mr. Connor and I had a conversation at our last one-on-one specifically about this, because I wanted to see where we are as a district, and it's really to get an assessment, because it's not just the cell phones and social media, that's huge. And I want to make sure, I love the PSAs and informing and supporting families, because I, as a parent, I mean, my children don't really have access to it, but I'm sure their kids, their friends do, right? So it's teaching and learning, but also, but you trying to keep up with it is very difficult. So I empathize, because I feel that way as a parent. But also within our role as a board, as a government, but what's our position in this? And particularly on the academic side, there is a litany of evidence that just was released in a couple of white papers last month about just the cognitive decline for children when it comes to utilizing technology inside the classroom. Just not using paper and pen. So there's a lot of evidence that's coming out with that. So what I had asked the superintendent was, can we do an assessment of how much tech are we using right now? And just where are we? Because I don't know. And I do agree. This is a great area where we all agree. I think it only betters and improves our learning environment for our students, and then also allows us the information to find the ways to improve our guardrails, but also blending in with subject matter experts, because there is more evidence now than there has been for a long time. And I don't know why it took so long, but I'm glad it's here. And I think it's something we can't ignore. I think it's our obligation. I've said over and over many times when we talked about the cell phone piece, I can't support a budget that's going to fund mental health initiatives, but also not put more restrictions on cell phones, because we know that there's a correlation there. It doesn't make any sense. But to me, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I'd like to, and I know Mr. Connor, you were going to evaluate what platforms, and I think there's an opportunity to save money as well, because I think we have an abundance of platforms that we don't necessarily need that are just overutilized. So all of that being said, I think that there's extraordinary opportunity here. I know we have a retreat coming up, and this may be a great topic for us to really hone in on how we do that. And is it bringing in, because I think I read these things all the time. I don't know what the public sees or is interested in and not, but even having staff or other educators understand some of these things and why this board finds it so important, even having that in a public meeting, to your point, is not necessarily, could be a very valuable opportunity for people to really understand that connective piece. And as policymakers, I think we do have a role, and I think staying in that lane of how it pertains to education is where I'd like to stay. But I love the PSAs and bringing in resources, but I think there's a lot of work that we could play, and I don't think anyone's doing it very well. So we all agree on that, and I do believe it is Tuesday, just an FYI. So I love that. Mr. Edwards, I'm sorry, you had your...
Yeah, I just want to circle back that I would like to, from my perspective, I would love to just offer Mr. Connor some of the subject matter experts and pieces of work that I've been exposed to over the recent months. And what the biggest piece that I keep hearing from these folks is that because of AI and the advancement and the rapid advancement of it, is that they're highly concerned that our students are going to lose human interaction, and if we're not proactively in front of it. Also agree with Mrs. Rose, middle school's too late. We have to start as soon as we possibly can. And those are the kinds of subject matter experts and things that can get, we could see at workshops or read independently and then come back with a better direction to the superintendent, but I also trust the superintendent's ability. I mean, he's done an incredible job. It is one of the places that we agreed. We didn't agree about getting rid of the last superintendent, but we agreed on this one. So,
Scoreboard up here.
so I really do think this is an incredible opportunity for this board to take a giant leap forward and start really being the best place in town to be where our students are well-rounded with technology and human interaction.
Yes, I think there's lots of opportunity there. So do you have any?
Yeah, I think it's great conversation, and I just want to remind too that I think we're moving down that path. We did have our last parent university. We had 4 parent workshops ranging from Venice, Sarah Middle, McIntosh, Booker Middle School, where we brought in Katie Greer, a national expert on this, and it was really to equip our parents with how to promote that type of safety with technology with their children, because you're right, they don't have it. But it is like one of those constant things. You can never get it done in one, the tendency,
Ongoing.
it's ongoing. You want to try to figure out ways that you can cast the widest net, touch as many students and parents as possible in that process, because that's where you start to see change. And so I think this team is right on board with making sure that we're achieving those priorities. And of course, we just have to make sure that we have the right infrastructure, the financial, time to do that. And so, to Ms. Barker's point, I would say that yes, it is baked into our standards as early as first grade. But we got to make sure that our curriculum supports that, and our teachers have been trained on that. And how do you integrate that along the conversation? It's not necessarily an isolated lesson about technology, but it's built into the process of learning. Just like we do with a lot of different aspects and topics that we teach. We don't teach in isolation. It's an integrated approach. And technology is so integrated across all subject areas, all the way up K through 12, that it is going to have to be embedded and staircased through each. So I hear the board. I think we'll bring back something to you once we have some time to really flush out what that comprehensive approach would look like. I am thankful, at K-8, at least in terms of the day-to-day operations of a school, that cell phones are not allowed in our K-8 setting. We do allow them during transitions at our high schools and in our lunch periods. And, I think that strikes I know Ms. Ziegler's not a fan of that, but I feel like it's a good balance of allowing students as they're maturing to make some of those personal decisions. And they do leverage them for instruction. But again, there's always downsides to it, and I understand that as well. I do notice that some schools that went with districts that went with complete bans all the way through high school are backtracking on that and allowing high schools to have some of that exposure, at least to it. And I think when you're getting into that, you talked about age appropriate, developmental appropriateness, it is a part of every one of your lives and my life, right? As adults, we are using technology, and if we go 5 minutes without it, we start to have withdrawals. And so it's how do we cope? Again, teaching how do we cope, deal with it, making sure that now we're not over-reliant and isolating ourselves from that human interaction, but also realizing that it's a part of our everyday life and we need it. We need technology. We can't completely cut it out of our life. So we got to figure, although it would be nice to do that some days, I can tell you that. But yes, we are with you on that, and I think we can be the leader in this.
Wonderful. Well, that's a great way to end today. I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me, so I'm going to wing this, but our next board meeting is January 20th at 10 a.m. We have the convocation of governments on January 16th, beginning at, I have 8:30 a.m., maybe when we start our coffee service. Is that correct? It starts officially at 9. Am I missing any other announcements?
Our board workshop.
our retreat will be on
thank you, that's right.
January 26th from 10:30 to 2:30 at the Sarasota Art Museum.
Perfect. That was the other one I knew I didn't have. All right. And if there are no more comments or questions, thank you everyone for an incredible job. I now realize you probably didn't get much of a winter break, but I know that we are incredibly grateful for you, and I hope the community recognizes the hard work that you guys put in every single day. With that, if there are no additional comments, we stand adjourned.